Welcome to Wednesday Comics.
Brought to you by rootsoftheswampthing.com and Siouxpercon 2018 Return of the Con.
Hey everyone, keep turning those pages.
Welcome to Wednesday Comics. To my right, we have Isaac Newton himself. Alex, how you doing?
Hello everyone.
And across me, we have Leonardo da Vinci. Garrett, how you doing?
I'm feeling holy.
Leo da Vinci, and I am Nicola Testa Marvin, and we are here, Wednesday Comics, the comic book podcast that's giving you some reviews, news, and in-depth feature this week on S.H.I.E.L.D. That's where those names come from, so stick around to the end for that, and also for comic book reviews coming up here in a second. But before we get to that, some big news, a little shakeup with DC. Probably should have.
You call it a shakeup? You mean more like a rebirth? If you catch my drift.
DC Entertainment Chief Creative Officer Geoff Johns steps down in latest Warner Brothers shakeup. Batman and Superman are down another boss. This is from Los Angeles Times. DC's entertainment top creative executive Geoff Johns is leaving his position in the latest shakeup for the storied Warner Brothers' own comic book publisher. Studio on Monday said Johns, who has served as chief creative officer of DC since 2010, so he's had this job for 8 years, and helped develop the studio's film and TV superhero strategy, wants to return his focus to writing. Johns will become a full-time writer and producer for Warner Brothers and DC films and television shows, the company said. The comic giant has endured a series of management changes in the wake of the disappointing run of DC Comics films, including last year's Justice League. Johns' departure comes less than a week after DC Entertainment President Diane Nelson stepped down from her job following a 2-month leave of absence. DC Films triggered an overhaul at the Time Warner-owned studio several months ago. Walter Hamada, who is the guy behind the Conjuring universe, those movies, Annabelle, Conjuring, The Nun now coming out. Warner Bros. Was like, hey, you'll be in charge of the DC universe because you obviously can make a universe out of that. So he's not doing it. Let's go down here to, now they just talk about Warner Brothers, but we don't.
So he's going to be the Helmer over Geoff Johns? Like the one bridging him.
Halma is the new, because before it was Nelson, so now it's Halma.
That guy is the new.
He's the new guy, like in charge. He's the new Kevin Feige, and Geoff Johns before was a guy being like to give creative input, be like how they should do it. He's Geoff Johns. He knows what's going on, and now in his place is going to be Jim Lee. Jim Lee stepping up to be the chief creative officer, which we'll talk about in a second. I just want to talk about what Geoff Johns is doing. There's a line here, what he's going to be doing next.
Well, he's writing the Hal Jordan he's writing the Green Lantern Corps movie. He's writing the script for that.
Oh yeah, let me see that. Send in that article for some reason. Why would you put that article on and then not put the rest of it in there?
Maybe they had to redact it now.
Oh, here it is. Johns, in addition to the aforementioned Green Lantern reboot, which he is writing, which is very exciting to me, he has writing credits for December's Aquaman, so he co-wrote Aquaman coming out, and he's writing next year's Wonder Woman sequel. He's also going to be writing some comics. He's going to be writing Shazam, a comic coming later this year, it said.
Oh, damn.
Which, by the way, we were waiting to announce it in a press release like that. I don't know if they were supposed to. But they don't know, right?
Yeah, they're just like, well, he's not doing our movies.
I think
anymore.
Maybe it was Comic-Con news they were saving, and then like, yeah, he told me he's going to be doing Shazam. But he's going to write a Shazam comic, and he's going to be doing a comic miniseries called The Three Jokers with Jason Fabok.
I saw on Twitter. I saw they did
Fabok.
I saw they did a preview image of it. So we're finally getting to this.
They're going to get to it, and I think maybe this might come because of all the Doomsday delays, that he's like, I really want to focus on this, and maybe he thought he could come to TV and movies. By the way, the TV shows is great with his input.
Yeah,
like
Flash.
Remember when he used to do Smallville, when you saw Geoff Johns wrote an episode, that episode's gonna be great. I mean, that's the whole is true. When he writes an episode, it's a great episode. He's a great writer, but when he was a chief creative officer, maybe he's not the best at making decisions for the business. And I think maybe he finally realized that and he stepped down, or maybe also like he didn't feel like
they
he had a
probably didn't give
voice.
him enough. Yeah, right. They probably didn't give him enough say because, like, when you see like the Zack Snyder movies, it's like Geoff Johns might have been like, "Well, Batman wears a bat on his chest." He's like, "But it's got to be really, really, really." Black
I think that's
gray.
that Superman we saw in Justice League. I think that's because of Geoff Johns. That kind
which one?
The Superman we saw in Justice League. The more happier,
lighter color.
Right.
lighter colors and stuff like that. That's Geoff Johns.
Right.
And Wonder Woman 2, I know he had a lot of influence on that too. So, Jim Lee is going to step up in his place. Jim Lee, the guy who gave us New 52. Him and Dan DiDio, that was their decision. And Geoff Johns, the one who gave us Rebirth. So, like, in terms of decisions I've known they had in the past, Jim Lee doesn't really have that great of a track record. So I don't know if this is really great news with those.
Why? Because
movies.
when I heard the number 52, I meant how many weeks it takes him to do one page.
Well, dude, it's definitely, what was that comic he's doing, the Immortal Men?
Yeah.
He's definitely not doing the art for that anymore. He's
No.
definitely not doing anything for a while.
No.
If this gets, I mean, he was slow before.
Right.
I think the sad thing when I think of Jim Lee, the only good thing I've seen was Batman Hush.
Yeah. Well, he had time. That's when he wasn't big.
Yeah, when he actually just
that
was an
made him
artist.
big.
X-Men, when he used to do X-Men, that's back when he was Jim Lee the artist, yes. Yep. And actually, he did the cover he's doing a variant for Batman 50, and I think it actually looks pretty great. But once again, like, he knew that was coming for like 2 years. So he was like, he probably been working on it for 3 years. So he's been a businessman for a while. He's been the DC Comics creative head for a while. Well, he was, and I think he stepped down, and then it was Geoff Johns for a little bit. And he was more of the business guy for DC. So now he's going to be the TV and the movie person. So 2 questions here. 1, are you excited more for those movies, the Wonder Woman, the Aquaman, the Green Lantern, knowing that Geoff Johns is writing them? And 2, for Geoff Johns doing more comic work, are you even interested in like seeing that story, the 3 Jokers? Shazam, I think we're all excited for.
Yeah.
I think regardless, with Johns taking over as more writing and being a part of these other movies, or knowing that he's going to have been a part of these movies, Green Lantern can only be better than what it was to begin with. So
I guess that's true. I mean, that pitch we heard a couple of weeks ago, I guess that comes from his script that he's writing, that it's going to be Hal Jordan is a veteran and he's training John Stewart. So,
but in Justice League, I think for the most part, we're all looking forward to hopefully seeing a Green Lantern show up in the current team and be like, holy crap, yes, be excited. Wonder Woman on its own, that movie was great to begin with, just to know that he's going to have a little bit more input and be able to have a writing credit, correct?
Wonder Woman, he's writing.
So he's writing the whole. He's writing the whole thing.
Aquaman, he co-wrote.
Okay,
The other
so
two he's
either
writing.
one, both those characters were great to begin with in Justice League, and I enjoyed them. And I am looking forward to seeing what he does with the individual character.
I think when Geoff Johns was thrown in to the DC movies, like at the point that they were already beyond, he was more like damage control. It's like, we got to fix this.
It's very easy to mess something up, bring a guy in to fix it, and be like, you didn't do a good enough job.
And I feel like Jeff kind of maybe felt like, how Bendis left leaving Marvel. It's just like, that's not fun for me. I want to go back to doing the things I love. Like, I was trying to do this big thing for you, but you weren't giving me a voice, probably. And he's like, I'm going to go back and do the things that make me happy. Like Doomsday Clock, every issue he's written, I've loved. Shazam from New 52 was really great, but again, there was delays because of art and things like that.
Well, wasn't Shazam only showed up in that Justice League for 12 issues?
Yeah, it was the last 5 pages even. So I think he really wanted to tell a Billy Batson story and never got the chance. I think there is a big hole in the DC universe without Geoff Johns writing comics, because he is such a great writer. I mean, he's done Green Lantern, he's done Flash, so many great superheroes.
He's definitely a guy, when they announced that he was moving on to movies and TV, that I felt sad that he wasn't writing comics anymore. And that's why when we got the announcement for Doomsday Clock, I was like, oh, he's coming back to write that. But you're right, though. Like, this is where he lives. This is where he does his best work. I mean, writing scripts will be kind of like the same thing and what he's good at. The only thing is like, now it's not really up to him to see if they execute it well. That's going to be Jim Lee, and that's going to be Hamada to see if they execute it well. But at least he'll know that he's giving them source material that's like, or like his script's going to be like, this is at least good. Like, if you follow this. But I guess this doesn't mean that because those scripts are going to be great, that the movie's going to be great. They could always butcher and not cut it up and be a directorial mess or whatever. There's some great scripts that are bad movies. There's some bad scripts that are great movies. So I at least know, though, that the direction of the movies because of the scripts are at least going to be different. I feel, at least. I don't think Geoff Johns writes the kind of movies that DC's made so far.
The only thing that's going to be sad is if you see a rewrite by David S. Goyer, then you're going to be like, oh, no, buddy.
Well, he originally was co-writing Green Lanterns, and they
David
announced,
S. Goyer was?
Yep, and they announced that Geoff Johns is writing the whole thing. So
right.
They kicked him off it.
What did David S. Goyer helped with Man of Steel, you know? We also, I mean, come on.
One follow-up question, and then we can move on to these comic book reviews. Do you now? I guess there's not very much evidence when you're part of a team like that. Like, what is exactly your decision? So we know for sure New 52 is Jim Lee's decision.
Yeah.
And I've heard Jim Lee talk about New 52 and like what they wanted to try to do with it, and it makes sense. But like execution-wise, it never really panned out, right? Do you have? So Geoff Johns in the script, we said I think we all agreed that hey, at least the script's going to be good. But then you have somebody that's going to be interpreting the scripts for Hamada and be like, I think this is what we should do with this. Is Jim Lee that guy?
Well, let's think about this, okay? When you think of a comic, right? Let's say Batman and Wonder Woman, Brave and the Bold. Liam Sharp was writing and drawing that book. But when you saw the writing credit, were you thinking, he's a really great writer? Were you thinking that?
No.
Okay, so Jim Lee, great artist. But have you ever seen him write anything where you're like, he's a great writer, and I'm so excited about the direction he's going to take with all this stuff.
The things that I've seen him write are like the very... It is what DC movies are right now. It's dark, brooding. It's like extreme. Like he was big... When Image first broke off, he did Wildcats and did, his Wildstorm universe. And, that's who he kind of... Like what he kind of likes doing. So it kind of just seems like I don't see a different direction with him. I see him being like,
quo.
I see him watching Batman vs Superman and be like, it looks pretty cool.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I say in a way, it almost sounds like we have the opportunity to devolve, where actually the DC has really kind of blown out into this other stuff. We're getting JLA Dark. We're getting all these other options to come out, which it makes me nervous going, are we going to be pulling the reins back and going, well, that's too much going on. We need to put those blinders on and focus a little bit more on these realistic type of things.
It's hard to do that when a movie's already in pre-production, though.
One more thing here, because you just reminded me about it, and I actually just want to bring it up. We can touch on it, and then we'll move on to these comic reviews, like I said a second ago. You said Justice League Dark, which reminded me that there was a news story that came out this week that they are moving forward with Joaquin Phoenix? Joaquin Phoenix Joker movie.
Oh fuck! I already know this news. It's horrible.
It's very strange.
Horrible.
They said, and they also are moving forward with the Jared Leto Joker movie, like 2 standalone Joker movies, and their explanation about it is that they are going to do movies in continuity, which is the Jared Leto one. And they're going to do movies out of continuity, kind of like, and they said in the article, they call that a DC Black label movies that are like out of continuity just to tell stories. And Todd Phillips, who directed The Hangover, and is directing this Joker movie with Joaquin, and they're moving forward with it. And do you think that's confusing?
It's stupid. Okay, first off, Jared Leto's Joker, because I need to see Gangsta Joker like tearing up the screen. Like I thought he was awful in Suicide Squad. He was one of the worst Jokers I've ever seen. Dedicate an entire, probably only hour and some minutes, because you can't really tell a 2-hour story with that guy.
If you ever want any evidence that they're only trying to make money, is that Suicide Squad was a creative disaster, but it made so much money that now we're getting Suicide Squad 2, we're getting a Joker spinoff, we're getting a Harley spinoff, we're getting, I think the Harley spinoff's by itself, and they also like a Bird of Prey that she's going to be in. And it's like 4 movies that they're like, hey, people like this. And it's like, I mean, people went and saw it, but like, do you really want to hitch your wagon on something that everybody said, this is horrible?
You need to light that wagon on fire.
The only one that gets me excited is the Joaquin Phoenix one. Because he's kind of like a methodical actor. He's not going to do something if it's going to make him look stupid.
I think it might be a good movie. I just think the decision's strange. When you're trying to build a universe and you're not sure how you want to do it, you go, you know what, let's make 2.
Well, that's like they said that Matt Reeves' Batman series might not be in continuity.
They announced that Matt Reeves' Batman is going to possibly be a young Cape Crusader, like a Batman Year One story.
Right.
And it's not going to be be Ben Affleck, it's going to be a different actor. Which is like, I don't understand. There's so many directions they're going in.
It's so polarizing.
Instead of having all these eggs everywhere, focus on the basket and make a comparable universe for your movies.
That Flashpoint movie's got to come out. Fucking fix all of this.
I told somebody the other day that nothing will ever. There's only one thing that would ever make me forgive Warner Brothers and DC for that whole movie universe. I consider that Dark Knight trilogy like its own special thing. It's not part of this whole thing.
It's not part of it.
But how do you mess up Green Lantern when it literally is space cops? And
when you go to Oa for 4 minutes, the entire movie.
You have it all on the planet Earth. Like, it's literally a movie where you can do anything. It's about your will and the imagination to will that power. And it's such a cookie cutter movie that like plays it safe. Like, that's the one movie where you can do anything you want to do, and they're like, yeah, he's on Earth. And it's like
well, you see how many writers were on that script. Like, I can't believe Geoff Johns put his name on that thing. Like, God, that movie.
Well, that's what I mean. Like, the simplest things they can do in that universe, they overthink it. They put out this mess that 15 people have touched, and it happens over and over and over again. I don't think replacing people is going to change anything because they don't understand. How about we just make one movie, and then that's it? Like, they keep being like, hey, how are we going to build this universe? You know what? Let's make another universe where they're out of continuity films. And you know what? Those movies might be good because they're out of continuity. Maybe because they'll focus on actually making that movie and they don't care about anything else. But it's just a weird decision where you're like trying to build a universe with continuity and you decide, we can't tell a really good Joker story. How about we make one out of continuity? And you're like, for what? If you had a vision and you like wanted to make these, like the same thing we talk about in comics, if you really wanted to write Thor #1, right? You would be like, I got a story to tell. Can you get me on Thor? You wouldn't be like, yeah, okay, I guess I'll do it. We'll see what happens. How's that? How's that any way to tell a movie? And I understand movies are most of the time there to make money, but I like when they start like failing like this. Like, eventually, nobody's going to go to these things. Like, all you're doing is like putting out this trash, and like
Marvel, it's all coming from DC.
Well, I said the thing is that like at least Marvel, I feel like has done the right thing. You've already established the world. You built up to that first Avengers movie. Then you could branch out and get a little weirder. So then you finally bring in your Guardians of the Galaxy. DC's pretty much gone. Okay, we're going to take this character, and then they're going to go to space, or then they're going to fight this demigod. Or weirdly enough, Batman's going to sniff out a parademons. Like, okay, I don't think that's going to happen.
Or even like
you got to build these characters and give them a.
They lead up to having Darkseid in Justice League, and they're like, yeah, he's not going to be in it though. And it's like, for what?
All right.
Said he was going to be in it, and it was going to be part 1 and part 2, and then I think it was like 6 months before it came out. They go, yeah, it's just going to be one movie then. And it's like, okay, like I don't like you guys can't even decide on one movie, let alone Marvel has movies planned for like 2023, and you're like, yeah, we want to be like them. How about first you settle down and you figure out what you want to do. RootsOfTheSwampThing.com, your definitive online source for all things Swamp Thing. Holland Files #2 is out, Garrett. How is it?
Holland Files 2 was awesome. A lot of cool like images that you haven't got to see in Holland Files #1, so definitely looking forward to finishing this bad boy.
And that's not the only thing. If you want to learn more about Swamp Thing, Alex, where would you go?
You're going to go to rootsoftheswampthing.com.
Make sure to stay in touch at rootsoftheswampthing.com on Twitter at DC World Swampy, Facebook.com/rootsoftheswampthing. Thor #1 from Jason Aaron, Christian Ward, and Mike Damundo.
I was going to say, as Christopher Nolan's probably like, how do I get my fucking name off that executive producer credit?
He signed some deals. He's making some money, but you get Interstellar and you get Dunkirk because of that. That's why.
Those are good movies.
Thor #1, we have there's 2 stories. One's way shorter than the other one. In this, for $6 for 40 pages, as Garrett has said for the last week and a half.
Still pisses me off.
We get one story up front that is a continuation of where we left off in Thor, the ending of Jane's story. She's still in this one part too. Mike Del Mundo doing the art for this section here. What do you guys think? We have Thor. He is trying to be Thor again. He doesn't have his hammer, so he just has a bunch of random hammers that they're making. And Loki shows up and he's like, hey, let me show you what the War Realms... We're leading it to the War Realms, we have been for 10 years, and less than that. But still,
4 of it was
5
Jane.
at least. But there's always been like, even in the Jane story, in the background, it's been happening for a while. Roxanne got a planet, like he was helping them the whole time, and so Loki finally, like, I think it's the first time that somebody has shown one of the heroes to be like, hey, this is happening right now. I guess you guys haven't noticed for like 5 years, but here it is. And was it worth it in this book to read that part? And does it even interest you at this point to see the War Realms?
No, because all the realms have been destroyed for as long as the heroes have been talking. They spent all this time fighting other characters, Mangog and War Thor. No one even gave a shit about Malekith and what evil plan he had. I'm surprised they even wound up on, is it Jotunheim they end up on? Or what's the Nilfgaard?
Niflheim.
I don't know how that place is still standing for the fact that everybody's already came and destroyed most everything in the universe.
You know, I usually like Mike Diamondo's art. I really didn't like the style here. I'm not sure it was the coloring or what, but it...
His color, I thought the coloring was different because when I think of Weird World, it had almost even more vibrant colors. This seemed kind of drab for what he normally puts out.
But I don't know, guys. Have you read the Avengers run with Mike Del Mundo's art? I couldn't even read it.
No,
because his art was so vibrant and color. Like this, I think I like this style. I think it makes it more readable, especially for new readers.
Well, isn't he usually a guy that, like, in Weird World at least, and didn't he used to do like Elektra way back in the day? And he was a guy that, like, was really elaborate, like 2-page spreads, and he was really
watercolors.
He was a guy that like really went out to make sure like his panels were creative, and it just felt like it was Mike Del Mundo fitting a style, like fitting like how they wanted Thor to be. Like it wasn't really him full.
Well, it's not Marvel fun; it's Marvel money.
But I almost felt like Del Mundo wasn't the right choice for this book. Like,
especially
if Thor had gone to a different realm or a different place, like at the end of this, when they end up in Niflheim, okay, yes, I understand the art could change when he goes to a different realm. That's fine. I almost felt like this first issue needed to be more of a Walta kind of art, or more of your just a not to sound boring, a regular art style. Did
you like Christian Ward's art for the second part?
Yeah.
I think that would have been a great
I wanted to bring that up on this podcast because I need to apologize to Christian Ward, because I've said on this podcast before that he was a horrible artist when he was doing the Ultimates, and I'll stand by it.
Sometimes you can improve your craft.
Hey, it didn't in the Ultimates. It didn't look that great. And then so when he was on Black Bolt, I'm like, I'm not going to touch a Christian Ward comic, and I didn't know he was doing the backup for this. So I started reading it, being like, this man's really, who's this? This is really good. This is like seeing almost like ancient textbook, like kind of art style. Like this would be like a Norse mythology book that they would have written. And I'd be like, hey, who's this? Like this is really like an 80s kind of like spray paint on the side of a monster truck kind of style. And I was like, this is really cool. And I went back to the front to Christian Ward. And I was like, wait a second here. Christian Ward of the Ultimates? Because I remember the Ultimates. And I'm pretty sure I could draw better than that.
Are you talking about volume 1 or 2? Because volume 2 was that Travel Foreman guy.
No, it was volume 1.
Okay.
He would fill in for Rockefort. And I really enjoyed it. And I thought when I was reading his section, I was like, Christian Ward should be in the art for this book. That's what I thought anyways. I thought it looked great.
I think Del Mundo has such a, like, there are a lot of people that think his art is amazing. And it is, I think his art
when it's good, it's good. But
right.
this wasn't good Del Mundo.
So that I agree. Yeah. He has a style, and depending on what the book is, I think it's one of the most fitting art styles. But this book, I almost didn't feel like I needed the vibrancy yet. I didn't need that uplifting. I needed
it's like when Sorrentino was doing Secret Empire, when everything was constricted to those little paneled grids. So I bet Sorrentino was like,
that's
God,
exactly
I hate
what I was thinking
this.
of. When they brought Sorrentino in, and they're like, we got Sorrentino, and then they didn't use Sorrentino. No. They were, hey, draw these panels like just people talking. You're like, why do you have Sorrentino for people talking?
Leave Marvin and Alex and Garrett and Alex's favorite book.
And and then in this book too, I was like, I mean, like Alex said, maybe eventually we'll get there, but it's like, I don't understand. Like, in this issue wasn't good. I'll just say that. I mean, it might be better later on, but it wasn't good.
Well, let's talk plot a little bit, because I think the plot's got a lot of holes.
I thought the dialogue was kind of poor.
Dialogue, I thought there's. I just retweeted. Go to my Twitter. It's I forget who it was. The comic book creator said, "Hey, can we quit over explaining the comics?" And this first story, Jesus, like can we, if you have Mike Del Moon to let the art tell the story, like maybe
Right.
that's what it is that he's
Like I told you, this is dumbed down for new people.
it's definitely a number one that they're like, hey, we got to catch everybody up on what's happened. So when he sees Jane, he's like, Jane, you still got cancer? It's like,
Yeah, that's the thing. I was like, okay, so you had this really heartwarming thing about people connecting with Jane with like having cancer, and then they like make fun of it in this. I'm like, what?
Oh, don't touch my hammer, Jane. How's the cancer going?
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay.
And then actually, that was the scene I was thinking about was the whole Jane part. It's like, I didn't need to know that because we've already read the book the last 12
And
years.
they changed her personality in those 2 panels. They were like making her seem like she's very interested in this and this and this. I'm like, that's not Jane.
She's a snoop. In this
Yeah.
book, she's a snoop.
Right. I was like, that's not Jane.
You know, Stanley used to say that he writes every comic like it's somebody's first comic, which this is a new number one, so I understand some new people might jump on. But at some point, you got to realize that exposition to catch people up maybe isn't the best for your art, and maybe isn't the best for storytelling, to be like literally tell somebody who that died of cancer, they came back, and like they had a heartfelt moment being like, oh, you're really gonna recover now. And then in essentially weeks time to be like, you still got cancer, Jane? And be like, what? You know what? Put a fucking recap page in here or something like that. Or
That's the thing. You're charging us $2 extra. You can't throw in 1 extra page to like make it 50 or 41
or
and put a recap.
there's a better way to be like, hey, Jane, how is everything going? And she's like, you know what, it's very hard. Like with the treatments and stuff like that, I'm just glad to be back in Asgard here for a second to get away from it all. Like there's a better way to tell it rather than be like, make a joke of it and kind of re-explain what's been going on. Because it's like, dude, nobody wants to read. When
they were on Asgard in this whole issue.
Okay, when he went to see Jane, I thought they were on Earth.
I know.
And even though I know they can't go back to Earth because the
she was,
bridge is
because-
broken.
because they were moving in Roz, yeah, she was moving in and she was using like Asgardians to move in, and so Jane was there helping her move in. That you're right, it was Earth.
But isn't
How can they get
Roz?
to Earth?
I said they couldn't get to Earth because even when Thor goes to Heimdall and asks, going, even with my blind eyes, I can still tell that you're sad. Too bad we can't get to Midgard to go do stuff because that bridge is broken.
And then I love how Thor's like, can you still see the other realms? I can't. He's fucking blind, man. His stargazing, universe-seeing power has been taken from him. Can you see the other realms?
Well, that's what I mean. It's like they have to reestablish.
Heimdall just stabs Thor. You're an idiot.
You see these bandages around my eyes?
God. And it maybe would have been better if literally that annual just came out and the annual was like the same thing, where it's like, all right, we got it. Like, and it was, how much was that? $6 too? $5?
At least 5.
And, I like Thor so much. Thor's one of the books I've been getting the longest. I got it back when JMS was doing his whole run back in the day. And it's like, I don't want to drop it, but also like it's come to a point now where they're charging every other issue's expensive. And then maybe like I don't care to see the War of the Realms. Like we've been talking about it for so long. It's never something that I see in here like, oh, here we go, finally. Like for when Thor became unworthy, I was excited to see, hey, how does he become worthy again? But when
you'll see it in 5 years.
When they mentioned the War of the Realms, I'm not really into it. And how dedicated are you to a character that you keep getting even though it's not interesting you anymore?
I still laugh at that last issue. He's like, remember how I was talking about War of the Realms? Don't worry, you'll see it next year. What?
Oh yeah, there's a 12-issue ramp up to War of the Realms.
But part 2 story was good. That's what I miss about this Thor book. Like if he's doing the old man
Christian
Thor,
Ward section of it.
The only thing I didn't like was the cliffhanger that Wolverine.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was strange.
Really. I was like, he's like, what up?
It could have been any other cosmic character. Why did it have to be a cosmic Wolverine?
Yeah, I think that they're like, hey, I guess it's coming out in September.
Yeah, maybe that's the thing. It's not a character that needed to be showing up going, hey, Bob, did you bring the beers? You're like, okay. No.
We got spoilers that Mjolnir comes back.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, a year we'll get War of the Realms. A year and a half we'll see Mjolnir come back. And then 5 years from now we'll see what happens. Like I said, issue 5. Did you see that? To be continued in issue 5. I was like, fucking with me?
There's almost too much going on in this book, and it's not about Thor just having a good time or Thor, beating up elves or beating up dwarves or a monster. that I struggled getting through this going, is this really worth my time? I like Jason Aaron, but this has been one of the, and I think a part of that, the whole, everything together. I didn't care for the writing style. The art was okay, but it wasn't enough to make me go, wow, this book was amazing. And it's just getting kind of repetitive. We're never going anywhere. We're just kind of stationary, looking out through a telescope going, oh, there's something there, but I'll look this way too.
I think they were tailoring this to the tailoring this to the Thor Ragnarok crew, because like for Odinson going through like a year or two of being unworthy, having to go through a fuck ton of shit, then he's just jokey the whole issue and like very comical. I was like, yeah, you're still not worthy, buddy. Yeah. He's like, doesn't matter. I wield thunder.
I think it's also weird that in this issue, like it's supposed to be in number one, and they're like having all this exposition to catch up new readers, but they want to give expositions for the last, I forget how it is, 5 years, 4 years, how much long it's been. Like so literally in the first section, that's all it is. When you're having 12 issues ramp up to the War of Realms, why can't you spread it out over those 12 issues? Like they like a new reader's not going to want to be like, hey, tell me everything that's happened in the last 4 years in the next 10 pages, please. Like I need to know now. No. It's like, no, for what? Jane had cancer. She died. She came back. She's no longer Thor. Thor is still unworthy. He's using random hammers. And Loki tried to kill Freya, but he actually was trying to help and the War Realms.
And
that's it.
Probably if you thought the Wolverine cliffhanger was bad, the part 1 cliffhanger, I was like, what? Oh, cool, I guess.
Oh, when they got to Mad Max Land?
Or no, what's the guy named Baldur or whatever?
Oh, Baldur the Brave.
The guy with the machine guns?
I was like,
no, that's not him, right?
No, Baldur the Brave is Thor's brother in Norse mythology. He can't die. So,
yeah, you already made me fall asleep. I don't care.
Legitimate Norse mythology, that sounds interesting to me.
That's what I mean. Like, I was just about to say, I was like, he's a good character, and actually, I would have been excited to see him again. But at the end of this, I was so beaten down by this exposition and like this way of telling a story that's just like and I'm not into it. I don't know if I'll get 2. I'm going to say that. It's 6 for me. That's the ending part's strong, but it's not coming back to issue 5. So
yeah, I'd give it a 6 too.
I was going to give it a 6.
Yeah, don't worry, Marvel. I noticed that you charged us $2 extra for a 40-page book, so I'm watching.
It's so disappointing because last week we had Immortal Hulk, which was so great and a good number 1 that I was like, man, these number 1s are going to be good now. And then we get Thor number 1, which it feels like a relic from an old age of Marvel that's not around anymore. And it's like, can we? Like,
should have passed the torch. Yeah. This is your opportunity to get a new writer on this book, and you wasted it.
And I like Jason Aaron.
And maybe that's the thing, though, is that I do like Jason Aaron, and I think that he's written Thor now for going on at least almost 5 years, I'm guessing. By now, I would think as a writer even, you'd be like, I got to move on.
I think he's going to have a case of Dan Slottness, where he's going to be on a book so long that after 10 years, he's going to be like, all right, I think it's time. But it's like, we want you gone at 5.
We want you gone sooner.
Yeah. Let's just move on.
Yeah, we'll move on. We're done talking about Thor. We're going to talk about Mr. Miracle number 9, written by Tom King, art by Mitch Gerads. I missed this book.
Good.
By the way, 6 years he's writing the book.
Is it been 2013?
2012 is when God of Thunder came out.
This was really good. I love how it's New Genesis talking to Apocalypse, trying to come to some kind of peace agreement.
Got some negotiations.
By the way, it's I really like this issue. It's super hilarious when he puts on the reading glasses. Like it's like this. I forgot his name. He puts on the
Calabac.
He's like this monster, and he's like, "Hey, let me get these reading glasses out of here." Every issue's been about something in adult life, right? It's been about, having a kid, trying to, lead a job and depression and suicide. And then in this issue, we get to a point now where he inherited kind of, or like got promoted, I'll say in quotations, got promoted to like the top level of this, and I'll say again in quotes, company. And it's him dealing with the stress of being in management, really, and being a manager and being like, having to deal with all the bullshit red tape, right? Because he's like, we're going to make a deal here. And then they come back. He goes, yeah, I didn't have the authority to make that deal. We're going to do a different deal. And him going home, like him being like trying to be a hard ass at the table, negotiating table, be like, we're not going to do this. And then going home being like, my teeth are clattering. Like he's so like, God, I can't believe that happened in there. And him dealing with that stress. I love, and I know people disagree with me. I'm not sure about Mr. Miracle, but like a Batman, I know people disagree with me. I love the way that Tom King takes these characters that are in these extreme, weird situations and be like, yeah, but they're still people. Like, Scott Free is still like, how's he dealing with this stress? And Tom King now is doing that Sanctuary book, which is about the mental health of superheroes. And I think that's really what his focus is on. It's like, like, sure, they might be Batman and be strong enough physically, like the peak of human performance, but like, is he mentally well? Is he mentally able to, see Jason Todd get killed in front of him and be okay? Is he mentally well? Like, is Mr. Miracle mentally well to go through a situation where he killed Orion? Did he kill Orion? Yes, right.
Darkseid did.
Oh, Darkseid did. And he walked in on it, right? And, become the new king. Is he mentally well when he literally just tried to commit suicide and he's really in a deep depression? Then he has a kid and he's like, oh yes, I'm finally have a purpose in life again. And then his brother gets killed in front of him, and then he gets his job. And then at the end of this issue, the big cliffhanger is he's like, Darkseid said he'll stop all this, he'll go away, you'll get everything back. He just wants your son, and he wants him to be the heir to Apocalypse. And I can't see a more scarier end to this issue, to the leading up to the series. We've been thinking the whole issue, what's Darkseid going to do? What's Darkseid going to do?
When you see his face on those 9-panel grids,
it's the first time we've seen him in the comic.
Terrifying.
Oh, actually, no, we saw him Flash
for
a second.
Part 1.
But both times were terrifying. He killed Orion, and then now he's going to take his son. Well, if they do it, that's a big decision. You can literally end a war and save millions of lives by giving up your son.
And you just see Barda, and they're just like, no, how do you make this decision? Like, it's impossible. It's like, it's the hero's downfall. There's no way that you're going to be happy with either decision. Well,
let's say, like, for instance, a hypothetical here, like World War II, right? It's World War II, and then you're a father, and they were just like, hey, we'll end all this. We just want your son. You can save, and it's like towards the beginning of the war. You'll save millions of lives. We just want your son. And like, do you be the guy that says, no, you can't have my son, and millions of people die, and this goes on for more and more years? Or do you say, yeah, you can have my son because it's worth it for the millions of lives, that one life?
That's when you tell that messenger, this is Sparta, and you kick them.
There's not always a giant hole around, man.
Well, then hopefully you're near a cliff so you can kick them
I think the very obvious choice is you don't give up your son.
Right.
You're not going to make that kind of decision. But it's still something that's going to weigh heavy on somebody who's not mentally well.
But it may not even necessarily haunt the person who made that decision. But years down the line, when you find out that a friend of yours, or maybe you're single, you've got a son, you end up finding another woman that you want to be with, she goes, you're the one that could have ended this years ago, and now we're living in this life that we have, and all because you were being so greedy. Yes, I understand it's your son, but look at the millions, if not billions, of people you've killed because you couldn't make the right decision. I mean, it may not scar him right away. It would scar that person long down the line of going, we're still living in this horrible world that I have let set.
By the way, and it might be spoilers, but I'll say it's really a theory for myself. And that's Heroes in Crisis, that Sanctuary book that's coming out by Tom King. On the cover is Mr. Miracle.
Right.
Because he went there. So I think he went there. Oh, that's right. I pushed that on.
Oh, that was weird.
Why? I mean, he's on the cover, so we can assume maybe he went or maybe he didn't. But like, why is he trying to recover his mental health? And is it because
maybe
it's going to be because of this decision? But it's because he gave up his son, or is it because he didn't give up his son in a scenario like Alex is saying, like you're affecting millions and millions and millions of other people's lives because you decided not to affect your life?
Yeah, but I think
No, I say you don't give up the kid.
I know,
right?
yeah. I know.
I'd be giving Darkseid the middle finger.
Right.
Like,
because there's always another way. I mean, they've been fighting a war already. So worst case scenario, you keep fighting a war. Just because they are at war doesn't mean that like Darkseid automatically wins. Yes, there'll be casualties, but that is war. And typically, you don't negotiate with terrorists. I mean, like in that kind of situation, you take care of your own. And if someone threatens your own, that's the reason you went to war in the first place. So, I don't have a child. I know you guys did, but I'd be like, fuck you. That's my kid.
What if it was Corey?
Try to touch this kid.
Take him. You can have him.
Give up Corey.
War's over. The war is over. No, I'm kidding. We're not like in a real life situation. I'd be like, go fuck yourself. Like,
Yeah.
you got to get through me first. Like, you want to
Well,
go
it's kind of
war?
like the mentality, right? Is it you're going to stop this war at any cost, or is not even one more life worth it? Right.
Right.
Like, yes, you give up your son, but like, how do you know what's going to happen when you give up your son?
And what's the point of having a peaceful nation if you're basically going to get so depressed that he's going to be back to the state without a kid, probably end up like hurting himself or like taking his own life, because how do you deal with the grief of having something so pure and precious and then it's taking from you and it's going to be manipulated into something dark, and that's going to be thrown in your face? Because if you think Darkseid's going to just let it like the child like never be shown to Scott, yeah right, Darkseid's going to like just take him around and be like, hey, how do you like my new apprentice to Apocalypse?
Well, and Barda would never forgive Scott for letting Jacob go.
Oh, he also said, hey, he will, like, he'll give you everything. He'll even surrender to the anti-life equation. He said that wasn't even on the table. He goes, in return for his complete capitalization, Darkseid humbly asked for one thing. And he goes, what? He goes, he asked for custody of his only grandchild, Jacob Free. He asked for the boy be raised in Apocalypse, and then he'd be raised here as the one true heir to Darkseid. So, like, even the one thing that Darkseid, he said, you'll never get this. I'm not going to give this up. And he said, and then he goes, by the way, I will give it up for your son, though. Like, the thing that's great about this, by the way, dialogue is great throughout the whole issue. There's some Barda stuff where they're trying to, like, take some R&R during between these negotiations, which is fun and cool. Like, once again, it's just like, if you were a manager and you're like trying to get away.
Well, you got your giant hole, he's just pissing down and kicking somebody down.
Yeah. It's like they went to out of town. They had to go to a hotel. So then they go to this hot lava pit that's like the pool.
Like a CS spa.
And so it's like, oh, you know what? I understand that you have to relax. You have to unwind, have a beer, do that.
Then you go back to the table and they're like, hey, the one thing, if you want everything, you got to give up everything. And
good call.
It
did make me pause when they said the anti-life equation. I was like, that's Darkseid's most powerful weapon.
That's what I mean. Like, if he's going to give that up, and that's what I was going to say. The great thing about this comic is it can have we'll say superhero in quotes. I mean, it is superhero when you think about it. Mr. Miracle, superhero comic, but we're here debating whether or not he should give up like his son. It's nothing normally that you see in comic books, or at least in normal day-to-day comic books. It is something really where I think from the beginning of this series, Tom King is asking the question not, about these new gods. Is not asking a question about like, oh, what are, like these guys who they're gods, like they're gonna be all like fighting each other, big explosions and like cosmic and stuff like that. It's been like the most grounded DC book that I've read that's supposed to be really out there, and it really has been asking questions since day one about being like, when we saw in that first issue when he tried to commit suicide and he wasn't well, how does somebody like that go throughout the rest of their life, and how does everything keep trying to push them back to that place, and how do you get out of that hole?
Right.
Like, and then when he thought he was out of that hole, he had the kid, and we had that issue where he was so excited. Remember, he was so excited talking to his wife about the kid, having to get in a room, and he's like, finally has, and he smiles at the issue, finally sees the reason why he can move on again. And then the kid comes, and obviously there's some some issues, with staying up with the kid, they're trying to juggle a job and a kid, but it's still worth it to him. And we get to this point here in this issue where he's doing this job because he has to, and the kid's not in this issue at all, by the way. So somebody must be watching.
I was going to say, who's that watched on last episode?
We left him with that Stan Lee like character.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And but he's like away for a business trip basically and trying to do this negotiation, and he's out there, and you can tell like him and Barda are like having some R&R, and they're talking about their family. Like they're really, that's still important to them. That's still the most important thing. And you get this decision, and it really is nothing good comes out of this. There's no happy ending here. No matter what you choose, either one is going to be, you're going to be tormented forever, or the other one, you're going to be tormented forever. They're both still the same thing.
Does Darkseid have a mother box?
I'm sure he does.
So he can teleport and go get the kid.
That's not the...
He could be back.
No. he's making he's trying to manipulate Scott Free. Obviously, he knows. Obviously, it's like Thanos. Okay, he knows he can get all the Infinity Gems. He just wants to toy with you because it gives him his jollies.
I suppose that's what you're saying. He could go get Jacob Free, but the point is to
he wants Scott
make
to
you
give
to
him
choose
up.
the question.
Yeah.
Okay.
He wants to torment
I
Scott
see.
so much because that's his son.
No, I mean,
He wants to
understand.
torment him and manipulate him so bad.
Oh, that's right. Scott is Darkseid's son.
Yes.
Okay.
Can I say also, this was a 10 for me. I love this.
10. So did it do? Wait, one last thing. Did it do the closing? Like what will happen to Mr. Miracle next? I love that. That part. The first time I read that, I was like, I mean, this is like the first time I read it, and I was like, holy fuck, what's he gonna do next?
Yeah,
It felt like an old serial. I was like, what?
You know what? When I read that, I was in this issue. Is the first time I thought it was like, I wonder if because it's from the old Jack Kirby run,
Right.
and that's how he ended and started each issue. And I wonder if Tom King, when he's writing this series, just like laid them all out and was like, I got to write a story where it ends, so that makes sense, and that makes sense, and that makes sense, and that's like when he got to this point, and it does say, and I agree, this is probably the best one, where it's like, don't get jumpy, it hasn't happened yet. Through Darkseid is abroad, the future is still free to all. Thus, from the heavy fragment of Mr. Miracle's past, we move to the most exciting and dangerous chapter of Mr. Miracle to be. And then the last panel is Mr. Miracle, Scott, saying, what? Again? After they're like, we want your kid. It's a 10 free, but I do also, Alex, what was your rate?
10.
I do want to applaud, I'm going to get really deep for a second. Tom King for being an advocate for mental health in this series especially, and then also doing Sanctuary and in Batman we've seen some of it a lot too, about removing the stigmatization of mental health, being like, we got to talk about this. Like, it's like you can't just, especially, and I think it's cool that he's doing it in comics because these people would be broken in a way.
Right.
Like there's no way you can do all this stuff and not have some sort of PTSD or have some sort of depression. Because lately, recently, there's been a lot of talk about depression and suicide because a lot of people have been committing suicide recently. So I do like that, at least in this medium, in this avenue, Tom King's not afraid to be like, you know what, we're going to talk about it, Mr. Miracle. You know what, in Batman, we're going to talk about it because there was that issue where he tried to commit suicide too. And now with Heroes in Crisis and Sanctuary, he's going to fully be like, this is what this is about, the mental health. And it's a way for someone to read it and be like, I finally understand. Like, I understand depression. I understand, at one point in your life, you're like, this is it. I don't want to live anymore. And the world constantly beats you down to bring down to that point. You have to be stronger than that. You have to find relationships that build you up. And like, you have to find a purpose in life and like try to move on. And Tom King is not trying to hide that he also has mental health. I mean, he was a spy for so long over in Iraq. And I believe he said before he has some sort of PTSD and so I think it's good that he's right now in comics being like, let's talk about this because it needs to be talked about.
I think when we, the first thing with like the suicide with Batman, I think it was one of the newest things. Like still, when I think about it, I know how I reacted. I'm not necessarily changing my decision on that thing, but I think it was just ahead of the curve of everything that's been coming after.
Well, that's what I mean, because it's usually something where you're like, it's for the first time where you think about being like, I think for you guys, it was like, why would Batman do that? Like,
right.
He's been like, these characters are kind of seen, even though Batman is a human in the universe, for us, he's kind of seen as like a guy. Like, these are like myths that we're reading out of the myths. So it's weird that you would have somebody that would make that decision. And then the same thing with Scott. He literally is a god in this comic, and he tried to do it, and he couldn't die. He couldn't figure out like how to kill himself. But I mean, it's good to bring up the conversation.
Yeah, it's true.
Well, that's what comics used to be used for anyway, was to talk about things without ever having to say it out loud. I
think that's the best.
That's a good choice. Yeah, I'd say it should always have a meaning. When I was reading Scarlet Spider, there was talk about coyotes and human trafficking. It's like, that's a comic that resonates and makes me think, wow, there's shit in this world that we live in. And there's things like this. And there's a lot of people who do suffer going through PTSD and other mental illnesses that it does need to be addressed. And I think a lot of Tom King's characters, Booster Gold, he's on that cover.
Yeah, and he just went through stuff in Batman. Like,
and he even talks about it. He goes, I can't get rid of the stain. And it's like, you know what? That I can understand that character himself needs to be able to move on, but he needs help.
And I think that's the reason why Tom King right now is one of my favorite writers. Because even if you look back to like Vision. His books are never about. I mean, you can read them as a Vision, Mr. Miracle, Batman comic. There is that there for you, but there is enough also for you to be like to gain another understanding. I think we talked about multiple times on this show that comics or any kind of art really is just to show you a different perspective and to make you think after you read it, be like, you know what, I understand somebody else better now. Like I understand, like maybe next time I'd read or hear about that somebody's depressed and they try to commit suicide. For me, it's not like you freak out about it and be like, whoa, that's kind of like, I don't want to really talk to that person. And like, it seems like they're a weirdo. No, it's just like, no, that person really needs your help. And like, really, you need to really sit down and understand it. If you got to read a comic to understand another human being, you got to read a comic to understand a human being. So it's good.
Medium's powerful. All right, we got Nancy Drew #1, written by Kelly Thompson with art by Jen Sainong and colors by Triona Farrell. So get a cold open of Nancy Drew saving a goat out of a treehouse. She's basically wrapping up a case real quick at her school. Some bully was trying to...
I don't know if the bully decided to have the goat kidnapped and had some of his friends keep the goat in the treehouse.
Well, she mentions your friends are wrapped up in the treehouse. I tied up your friends. You need to probably go get them soon. But I didn't know, did that... So the goat is their mascot, is whatever the school's mascot. And the guy who River Heights High School.
And the guy who had him kidnapped obviously wants to be that mascot. At least that's how I understood. He wants to be.
He was like jealous and he hated him.
Okay.
Yeah.
He wants some lamb chops.
Right.
Can I say, especially piggyback off of the last book we reviewed, this one was really fun.
Yeah, it was.
And
it was lighthearted. And I got to tell you, like, I was like, oh, Nancy Drew's awesome. And it's like, you know, how I was telling you guys about the nostalgia, like the Hardy Boys and everything. Then the fucking Hardy Boys show up. I'm like, holy crap. I get Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys? Like, that's amazing. Sorry, I spiked probably. But I was so excited when they showed up. I was like, holy crap. I get like the 3 best like detectives around working together to solve a crime. Like, so cool.
I actually really did feel like, I mean, it's a little... she's a little younger than Kate is. Kate's like in her early 20s and Nancy Drew's a teenager, obviously. But I really did feel like, I mean, it's a different person, but the feel of the book is really kind of like that Hawkeye book.
It felt like Hawkeye, and it did kind of feel like Kelly Thompson writing, but it also didn't, which is fine, actually, to know that she's got almost a different style of writing, that it didn't feel like her. Only one complaint I feel kind of bad saying this. A lot of the characters all kind of share the same facial structure, and it bugged me.
I think that's
not that I got confused on who was who. They either tell you in the writing, or they all do have hints of being different, but they all look a lot alike.
The art style is really kind of simple, so yeah, I can see that too.
But
it's really, but I would say for an artist, it's very hard to show different faces in a different style for each one. Like, I can see these 3 characters right here. Yes, the eyes are similar, but like facial structures, you can see rounder, skinnier face.
I think as it goes on and we learn more about who these people are, because by the end I was kind of getting a feel about who they are, that eventually just their voice, you'll be like, oh, I know that.
Oh, yeah. And I think the thing for me is that I never read any Nancy Drew books. I don't even think I've read any Hardy Boys. So how
have you ever solved any mysteries?
I had Batman for that.
That takes like 6 years for him to solve a mystery. This takes them like 30 pages.
I'm assuming she solved that goat thing pretty quick, because she goes, I found the scrape of wool from your suit, figured out it was you, went and got the goat, came back one day.
So totally going off tangent. If they made a book where Sherlock Holmes led a team and it was Nancy Drew and the Hardy Boys, best book in fucking history.
So who's the old one in that combination? Because Sherlock would be dead by then.
Holy crap! I said if for some. I don't care about how.
Some weird timeline they'd have to cross.
Of course you'd go there. I don't care about how. I'm just saying, if Sherlock Holmes...
There's one reason I'm on the show, and it's to crap on your guys' parades.
I'm just saying, the whodunits, this is where we're going.
Normally in comics, and Bendis does this a lot, and actually, it's the one thing I think in dialogue that I really don't like, because it's when somebody's talking in their parentheses it says something, and it's supposed to be like they say it under their breath. In this, she does it in the narration, which I think is okay, because you would do that when you're writing, to be like, put stuff in...
where she points out
parentheses like that,
things.
Yeah. That made sense, and I really did like the way it was done in here. Where normally some people do it in dialogue, and I'm like, are they whispering that, or like are they saying it? Like, I understand how you're actually saying that. I thought this book was fun. The art style is simpler than I thought it was going to be, but I think it works. And you know what? I think everyone, if you're going to have Mr. Miracle in your life, you need something like this to like
brighten your day.
I mean, also like to remind you that this is definitely for everybody.
Yes. Oh yeah.
So you can read this. I think teenager, but probably 10 and above.
Yeah.
And it's fun. It's the Kelly Thompson that I enjoy. It's the plot is never like the plot is interesting for a Nancy Drew book, and it's not like I read this issue being like I want to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I like the dialogue. I like the characters. I want the plot is going places where I'm not like, oh well, it's fun, but it really doesn't mean anything. It really is like a solid mystery kind of book, but also like it takes itself seriously, but not seriously at the same time.
Yeah, it focuses on the characters and like their interactions, while also because this mystery you can tell really comes home to Nancy because it's probably one of her first people she screwed over, like with one of her mysteries she solved. Because you got to know when Nancy Drew, like she was in like middle school, elementary school, and she solved so many mysteries. And so she's got a huge rogues gallery too, I would think. I mean, not like Batman, but I just mean like she's put away a lot of people.
That's the thing I like too is like we come in, it is issue number 1. And by the way, perfect example on how to do it compared to Thor number 1. We come in on this. I know nothing about Nancy Drew. I didn't read in the books just like Alex. Hardy Boys is where I was reading the books. And so I'm like familiar with those two. But we come into this and I don't need Nancy to talk to her friends like they're like, oh, this is your name. There's narration, there's a bubble thing, being like, hey, this is this person, this is who they are. And it was great because it didn't feel exposition heavy, even though literally it tries to tell you who Nancy is. We're coming into the story midway. She's returning to her hometown, and you're supposed to be like, oh, like for people who read Nancy, they're probably like, oh, she's going back to her hometown. The Hardy Boys are there, like you said, and like, oh, I know these people. But for somebody brand new like I was and Alex was, I feel like also it's not confusing and not feeling like, hey, here's all this information. I'm just like, oh, it seems natural.
Yep. I say when she runs into her old friends, not the Hardy Boys, but I don't remember what the girls' names are. But when she runs into her friends at the house that she's staying at, and they've got this, 20 years of being friends or however long they've been friends, all this, I didn't feel like they need to tell it to me. I'll learn it along the way, which is fine. They bring out little nip pieces here.
Yeah.
The one friend's kind of a crab ass. Respect. And then you got the other two friends who are just like buddy the whole time.
But do you also see like the exposition that happens in that dialogue sounds very natural. Like when she comes back and they go and they kind of say, hey, they're getting to know each other. And then when they're alone prior for a moment, she says, she just come back after 7 years and like decided to show up. Like, what's going on, Nancy? This isn't, you're hiding something. And she's like, no, I'm not trying to hide anything. But like that little nugget there was like, they don't know why Nancy's back. She's been gone for 7 years. She left this for some reason. She left out of the blue. They didn't even know why she left. And like you get so much information from dialogue that is literally what somebody would ask them if that happened, rather
it's not
than
like force fed down your throat. Like, oh, Nancy thought, they won't find out. Question mark.
Or it wasn't even like her new friends at the new place were like, Nancy, you're going back there. You haven't been there for 7 years, and you left there all suddenly one day, and your friends don't know about it. Like, I'm like that's exposition dialogue that is like so forced, and a lot what I saw in Thor reason why I don't like it. But in this one, like obviously their friends wouldn't say that because Nancy knows it and they know it.
Yeah.
So when they show up but those other friends don't know why she left, and they left randomly. And if we were friends and one day all of a sudden Alex just like took off and I don't know where he went and came back 7 years later, you better bet I'd be like, where have you been for the last 7 years?
Yeah,
like
man.
You just left one day, like that's coming up.
You didn't answer your.
To be fair,
telephone.
honestly, we talk almost daily. That it would be amazing. For me to just go like, screw you guys, I'm going home.
I know it was like a couple hours tonight. We're like, are we still? Marvin's like, are we still recording tonight?
So, but I think that's where Kelly's strong suit is, and I think what she's doing with Hawkeye is that it never felt like it was a struggle to read. It always feels like when I started this book, I was like, there's some books you open up, and I'm going back to Thor just because it's a good counter to this issue. When I open up Thor and I see all that narration and all that dialogue and stuff like that, I'm like, this book's going to take forever to read. And I know there's a certain point where I'm going to be like, do I really have to read this? Whereas Nancy Drew, I'm like, reading every word, devouring it, loving it. And when you get to the end, like it never felt like I was reading something. It felt like I was experiencing something.
Yep.
And I think that's where she lives at Kelly Thompson. I think we talked about with Hawkeye too. It was almost like it was never a chore to read. It was great. This was like a solid 9 for me.
And so do we tell you do we say why she actually left to go to this town, to her old hometown?
She got like a blackmail letter saying, "Hey," from one of her villains or whatever. We don't know.
They were talking about her mom.
Referencing to her mom.
They're referencing
Yeah.
they know why her mom died. The issue's called the case of the cold case. So it's a case she had from back in the day, probably why her mom died. She was investigating it, and then she left because, like, I don't know, she never figured it out or something happened.
Here, I'll read the letter. Dearest Nancy, I know what you did. I know you've tried to forget, but memory is long, and so is life, or at least it should be. What would your mother say if she was alive to say it, Nancy Drew? That's cold.
Yeah.
Cold case.
So this is a book I'm going to be on for a while.
Thanks for issue.
I really enjoyed it. I'm going to give it a 9 as well. This was my most anticipated book of the books that we're reviewing.
I literally told a group of people today, I said, hey, Nancy Drew #1 came out this week. You should read it. And, you get those looks because it's Nancy Drew. It's for some reason there's a stigma.
We're saying we're not the Emma Roberts movie, even though I'm sure it's a good movie.
There's a stigma behind it being like, oh, why are you reading Nancy Drew? And it'd be like, no, it's good. Like this is something anybody can read. It's not just going to be for, like back in the day, that's why they had Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew. They're like, this is for boys and this is for girls. This book is literally for anybody.
Yeah, it's for everybody.
It's good. What do you give it?
I think I'm going to give it an 8. It was good. And I'm going to get issue 2. I did enjoy it. When I look at this page that we're on right now, it's like, God, she reminds me so much of Barbara Gordon.
Yeah.
Batgirl. It's like, oh, you know what? I need a female detective in my life. Hawkeye went away.
You know how I'll know if Kelly Thompson really gets this character? If at the end of this mystery, she does a page where she shows me how all the clues fit and she figured it out. If they do that, I'm going to pass out and die. It's over.
Garrett's dead.
That'll be a 10 issue because that's never happened in a mystery book I've ever read from comics. Like they've alluded to some things, like even Department H when you get to the end and stuff like that. Like they don't give you. I don't care if it's stupid.
At the end, you want it to be spelled.
I want you to give me A to Z. How the fuck did you get to this conclusion?
Yep.
Please.
I think it's one of those things you almost need to, because then I want to see where how Nancy saw it. Yes, I see the same page that she's looking at, but she sees things I don't see.
That's what I like from Veronica Mars. Every time she figured out a mystery, she would explain how she got to her conclusions, kind of like Sherlock Holmes. And that makes the story better. It's because you don't need to know everything that Nancy's thinking until she's giving the results of her.
Well, until she's telling the bad guy, "Hey, this is how I found you."
Right.
So kind of like what she did with the sheep hunter or the sheep catcher.
Right.
She goes, "The reason I found you is you lost this part of your suit.
Right.
In here, sheep was gone. Led me to this place. Got your friends.
Part of your suit.
Beat the crap out of your friends and tied them up."
Right. So good.
We had Red Hood and the Outlaws, #23, written by Scott Lobdell, art by Ryan Wynn, and cover artist was Trevor. Well, at least for the cover you and I got was Hairsine.
So I was super surprised by this issue. I thought when I opened it was going to be about Red Hood and the Outlaws.
Yep.
It was all about Jason Todd, and I actually really enjoyed it.
I was apprehensive when I realized it wasn't going to be about Artemis and Bizarro.
Which is also kind of bullshit because that cliffhanger was like,
yeah.
what?
Well, so that's the thing is because I opened this going, did I not read another issue? So we open up where Red Hood he's at a gravesite, thinking he's digging up a certain somebody that I'll tell you in just a couple moments. Yeah. So then we go back to an hour before we go here to the gravesite, and he gets six letters from an envelope that we had received in issue 22, and it's from his dad, and his dad happens to be in prison.
Well, first, the notes by Ma Gunn says she explained why she did not ever give Jason those letters. So yeah, like you were saying, Jason's dad was writing letters to him from prison because he wanted to reconnect with Jason after all the horrible things he had done. But Ma Gunn kept them from him to keep him cold and calculating.
Yep. And so then we end up reading, or I guess Jason's reading these 6 letters going, I was a drug dealer and I met your mom, and your mom was the most beautiful creature I'd ever seen. Obviously, your grandparents didn't like her dating me, and that kind of put a rift in her family's relationship with the Jason's mom. So we moved out. Well, I got her addicted to drugs and all this horrible things had happened. Then we got pregnant. You were born. I tried to be a good dad. I knew I couldn't be a drug dealer anymore. So I went to do, what was he doing?
He was, I think he was working on cars or something.
He was doing odds and ends. And so then he does kind of, what turned him to prison? What got him to jail?
He was doing, well.
Oh, he was working for thugs.
He was henching.
He was
henching.
That's
yeah.
right. That's right. He was working for the big guys. So he goes, I worked for Mr. Freeze, worked for Two-Face. There's another one he worked for. Riddler. There you go. Riddler. Turned out the worst to work for was Penguin, because Penguin didn't want a henchman. He wanted a fall guy. Went to prison for it. So he ends up writing these letters, and Jason's actually, he's reading them, not being cynical. He's going, because even Ma Gunn says, read these with an open heart. Don't be shutting them out just because you're so mad at him. And Jason goes, I want to be mad at him, but I'm not.
When you read the way the dad pours himself into these letters, he's really telling a love story, and it's a tragic one at that. Like, you're right. He brings up the fact that how he met Jason's mom, whatever, and he said, I knew I was bad for her, but I just couldn't help myself. Like, when it's just kind of like when you know that you love that person, you can't help it. And so, yes, it was probably the most selfish thing I ever did was getting with your mother. And when I had you, I wanted so badly to do right by you. But you can just see, like, even in the style of this art, like the art, I think matched the storyline perfectly because it wasn't the best art ever.
No, it wasn't.
It was very scratchy and whatever, but it kind of gives you that uncomfortable feeling, like, through all this muck and grime and like living in despair and whatnot, like at least is it Willis or Will?
Willis.
Willis was trying to give Jason like the best opportunities in life, even though he had to go about it a horrible way. And so when Jason gets born, he's like, I don't know how I'm going to afford this. I can't, there's drugs because he had some conditions when he was younger, all this stuff. And that's when he turned to being a henchman. And so because the mom was so incapacitated by all these drugs she was taking that she couldn't do anything to support that family. So it was just him supporting his wife and his son. And there was one point I had to laugh where they were doing the birthing class and she's pregnant and she's like, the birthing lady even got mad that she was drinking alcohol and she didn't know that keeps her calm. Like, okay, fetal alcohol syndrome, but
hey, Jason came out fine.
Yeah, right. Well, sure, fine enough. But what already is a tragic character, being murdered by the Joker and coming back to life and things like that. He's got all this other shit just dumped on him in life that he really had no control over. I think it was always easy for Jason to hate his father for what happened to us because his mother died.
I'm sure he blamed his dad for that because his dad, dad was the one that got her hooked on drugs to begin with.
Right.
I'm sure that's part of the reason why I think he always hates Bruce is that Bruce is supposed to be that surrogate father. Well, your surrogate father let you die. Right.
So he's always been let down by the ones that he looks up to. And then, when you're right, at the graveyard, you see that Jason's like, he's read all these and he's trying to dig up to see if his dad's still alive or not, or if he's actually dead. And Penguin's, one of his guys is like pointing a rifle at him and Penguin's like, don't. Like, I think he's had enough pain.
Yep.
We'll give him a bone this time, which is like, holy shit, Penguin, you got a heart. But Penguin literally is the author of all of Jason's pain. Like, he's the reason that the beginning of the rolling of shit in his life began is because Penguin needed a fall guy and it just happened to be Jason's father. I think I honestly give this issue a 10. I think the art style was meant to be that way. I didn't think because that art was horrible. I think it fit the style. I think I read that right after Nancy Drew. So seeing the narration and letters too.
Yeah.
I think I was just in the mood to read a lot of prose. I do give it a 10. I really enjoyed it. I do miss the fact that it wasn't a Red Hood story. It was more just a Red Hood and the Outlaws. It was more just Red Hood. But it really gives you some insight to who Jason is as a character. Now, pacing with the rest of the series, I give that like a 3. Not really the best time to put this issue in. But I think the more character study you can do on like Jason Todd or Tim Drake and things like that, because I think a lot of people forget where these characters have come from. They didn't just start out like, hey, I'm Robin.
Yeah.
No, or hey, I'm Red Hood. There's so much intricate backstory that led to the person they are today that you shouldn't really forget that. You should always remember your roots and how you got there.
Well, and I think my only thing is I wish that they would have thrown at least a little bit of the Outlaws in, just so there was a little change of pace.
Right.
But otherwise, this issue was actually really good. And like you said, you need to have these background stories. You need to fill in these people for who haven't read Red Hood or don't know where he came from. Give an idea of where he's been, what he's done. Obviously, when he digs up the grave, Dad's not in it.
Right, yeah, he's alive. And they cut to a scene in prison where he doesn't want anyone to find him, things like that. He thinks the world's better off without him. And then now Jason has this big question mark in his life again where he's like, no, I don't want this. I want you to be dead. I don't want to spend the rest of my life trying to find you and understand why you would do this to me. Why
Needs closure.
Right. And so knowing Jason Todd, he's going to find it. So I think that's going to cause...
He's going to go to prison and beat the crap out of everybody.
It's going to cause a rift between him and the Outlaws, I would say. So everything, I think this is needed to lay some seeds down for the final arc. Because, Bizarro is going to be dealing with...
Final arc?
Not final.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
One of the final arcs, I would say, or one of the bigger arcs of this storyline. It's going to be Bizarro's deteriorating smartness. Artemis is trying to deal with that. But now you're going to have Jason going off trying to do this quest for his father. So things are going to get pretty conflicting.
And say Artemis is going to get pulled from each side, trying to pull the team together, which was never her intention to be part of a team.
Right.
And now she's the motherly figure. She's the sister to these guys of going, we're a team now, so we have to stay a team. But you're right. Last issue, we did get a lot of Bizarro Artemis talking about his addiction to kryptonite or liquid kryptonite.
Right.
Where we think he's off that crap, and no, we're surprised to know he still has a whole shitload of it in his cabinet.
Right. So, I mean, for this issue, if it was more like an annual, I think it would have worked out better than actually being part of the main series. But I still give it a 10 because I thought that was such great character study, character development, and really getting an understanding for, you usually associate with Jason, like, of course he should hate his dad. His dad causes him to have drugs and kill herself, like all these things. And it's like... It's kind of like when Marvin, you were talking about, like, Miss Miracle and Tom King. Yeah, welcome back. There's more than just things happening. There's reasoning and health issues behind it all.
Yeah. More than meets the eye Transformers.
And
what we're talking about?
And so he's not just the gunslinger. He's got more of a character to him than just the bad guy or the badass Robin. He's got friends. He wants to actually be a part of this team. He went on his own secret mission to find out about the Mod Gun envelope that he had gotten,
which is another failed person that he looks up to.
I'm gonna say another adult parental figure that used him for her own means, and
he was the one that got the butt end of the joke. So, what did you give it for a rating?
I'm gonna give it probably an 8. The art, it wasn't a bad issue. I actually really did enjoy this issue. Again, one of the strongest books put out there during Rebirth, but it just wasn't what I was expecting. I think that part of me was I went into it looking at the cover going, wow, we're going to see some ass kicking. And we did. He did beat the crap out of those 4 henchmen, but I give it an 8. It was good.
All right, next we got the Magic Order #1, written by Mark Miller with art by Oliver Coipel. So first ever Netflix comic. Oliver Coipel's art, amazing.
Yes.
I can say right off the bat, I thought Oliver's art was incredible.
Of the books we read today, this was actually my pick. I really did enjoy it.
I did enjoy it too. I think it was a good #1. It established these magicians very coldly, actually, well, at least for the murder of one. So you see a dark wizard, and you don't see who it is, but they possess a young boy to kill his father. Who happened to be part of a legion of magicians, basically.
The inner circle of this covenant or whatever.
Right, and now you have the, what's their last name? The family. Copenhagen? No, I'm kidding.
Not Copenhagen.
I don't know. But there's this family of magicians, basically, who are now all that's left in this order. And it's another kind of whodunit kind of feeling. Where, well, obviously there's the obvious suspect, which is this Madame Albany or whatever, and she comes in being a total bitch at this funeral.
That the shapeshifter henchman of hers was the worst.
Yeah, that was terrifying. Where he shows the wife the dead body of her husband that she woke up to next to naked.
So he transforms into the dead body and goes, "Oh, is this too soon?
Did you want to see your husband one last time?"
That you're a dick.
Yeah. So we have a father. Gosh, I can't remember names. I remember Regan, who is he's not related to the family.
No.
Moonstone.
That's right. Corpelius is the girl, or what? I don't know. The girl had a weird name.
Right.
Cordelia.
There's 2 sons and a dad.
Leonard Moonstone was the magician.
So the dad is Leonardo.
There's Leonardo.
Regan
Leonard,
is the kid.
Yeah. Regan.
What's the other brother's name?
And the other brother's name is, let me get to the...
So they must all be a family then.
Yeah, I say it's a father and 3 kids.
Gabrielle.
Yeah, there's 3 of them, right?
Okay.
I really like this. I think it's probably one of the strongest starts to Mark Millar's miniseries he's had recently. And I actually do. Coppell's art's amazing, and the coloring is amazing. Dave Stewart, I think, believes the colorist.
Yep.
It's probably the most, and this is weird saying because usually his books are very cinematic. It's the most cinematic one of his series that I've seen for a while, and it makes sense that Netflix is producing this or publishing it. And I think that he's writing these in mind to be this might be a TV show one day.
Right.
So let me kind of write it like that. And it doesn't suffer for any reason. He's not making the art suffer or the storytelling suffer because he's writing it in that kind of mindset, thinking that it might be a TV show one day. It's still great. It's really surprised me because I wasn't even going to get it. And I don't know why, because now I think about it, I think I've got to read Mark Millar miniseries since Huck. No, was Huck?
Jupiter's Legacy.
Jupiter's Legacy.
Circle and Legacy were the first ones.
Hit Girl.
Oh, yeah. But
we don't count the kick-ass stuff.
It was really good. It's this compelling story, like Garrett was saying. I like the families fighting each other, and the opening scene is probably how it's chilling, and it's also in a way being that's the perfect way to start this book because I understand what this book is going to be like, the magic, the possibilities, and it starts the motion of the mystery, and then we can get into some character stuff with figure out who this family is, and then by the end, we're back into the mystery again.
So is this a 6-issue mini or is this
4 issue?
Oh, really? It said 6
4.
on
Wow.
previous world.
6? It did?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Oh, I thought it was only 4.
I'm 80% sure. Let me jump in.
Oh, 6 wouldn't be bad. Well,
I think 4 would almost be too short. I mean,
that's what I was thinking going in, but if it's 6, that's great. You get the family, and then there's one son, Gabriel, who doesn't want anything to do with the magician's order.
Just trying to be a human.
And because something happened where he lost his daughter because of magic. And so that obviously we're going to get more backstory in that.
Yeah, 6.
It's 6? Oh, wow. I thought it was only 4. That's good, though. That's awesome.
I think this is actually one of my... I mean, I know we haven't had a Mark Millar story in quite some time, but the way that it opened with that brutal murder was so good. And it's that invitation to see how strong this bad guy is, whether he's a wizard or a magician or a sorcerer or Doctor Strange. Who knows?
I did like also that each one...
Well, it could be a witch. You're right.
Remember we talked about in the forecast this week, there's a magician, wizard, sorcerer, and they do feel different, right? His dad's kind of a magician guy, he does it for as entertainment, but he really is still a guy that actually can do magic. But
Cordelia is an escape artist.
Yes. And then we get the person at the beginning, which is their kind of magic is really kind of a dark magic. They possess the kid to kill the dad, and which turns out to be a wizard, right?
Yep.
So, but even that scene, I know people that don't like Mark Millar, and I think
I look at Garrett going, "Do you not like Mark Millar?"
No. I mean, the vast majority of the online community does not like.
Really?
Books.
Why is that?
Because they're so used to getting the
I'm not
Mark
saying that
Millar.
they're the accrediting body either, though.
What's that?
The online people. I'm not saying they don't know. Who knows what they know?
They're not
What
the
are you on
accrediting body.
Yeah, what does that mean?
I just mean whatever. That's hearsay.
What they say doesn't matter. They're not. They're
Well,
not
I'm
who
just saying,
decides.
but
Yeah,
people
are you
are
on that
saying-
side?
Right.
All I said
You're
what
an-
people are
you're
saying.
an
I didn't say
online
there's some
person.
part of some organization.
No, I just mean it's like whatever.
But
Speculation.
but because of they're so used to Mark Miller of the hip girl, like kick ass, kind of like being violent for being violent's sake.
Yeah.
And I really do think ever since he had kids and he did this in interview once that he decided that that's not what he wants to do anymore. That's how we got Jupiter's Circle, Jupiter's Legacy, and
Okay, Jupiter's Legacy had one of the most violent scenes.
I mean,
I've seen.
but if you've seen Kick Ass, it's like,
Yeah.
or you've seen Wanted, like
Yeah,
it's
Wanted's pretty bad.
it's like being violent for being violent. Nemesis, like those books are like, and I hate this. I know it. No, I'm not gonna use that phrase. That they're just being violent to be violent, and that's kind of like the point of this book, to be shocking in that way.
Yeah.
Where I think when he had a kid, he was like, "How do I do this differently?" And he decided that you can tell compelling stories and have acts of violence, but the violence need to have some meaning and not just be meaningless. And that's what this is. Like that beginning.
You mean you
scene.
don't mean like a dog biting your balls?
The beginning scene means something because it's the only super violent thing that happens this whole issue. And it's from a kid. Like he knows how to make these moments meaningful now. And I think, and then also like he does great character stuff. All this I was going to say, he does great character stuff. Like when you get introduced to every single one of these characters, by the end of their little segment, which was like 2 or 3 pages, you kind of you can be like, oh, I know who that is. Like when they meet their dad, and he's up on stage being the magician, and he tells the lady, yeah, just go ahead and shoot me. And she shoots, and he catches the bullet in his mouth. And then he goes backstage, and he talks to his kid, and he goes, wow, did you really catch that in your mouth? And he goes, no, she shot me in the chest. Good thing for this
Kevlar.
Good thing for this Kevlar. And like it was all a trick. Like, but he actually can do magic, but he likes to show off.
Yep.
And act like, hey guys, like
Puts on a show.
Yeah, put on a show. And then meanwhile, his son Gabrielle doesn't want nothing to do with it because he knows it doesn't lead to anything good. And Cordelia is drunk and like she can't
She's the black
handle
sheep.
it. Yeah, she can't, just like a black sheep. She can't handle the magic world, and so she uses it to like be a party person and stuff like that. So like by the end of this book, when they're all together at the funeral, and except for Gabrielle, and then he meets them up later, like not only the mystery is compelling, but I am interested in these characters. Like I want to see what happens more with these guys. I want to see their dad be this kind of like jackass, flashy kind of guy, and see if Gabrielle, like, does he go back with him? Does something happen where he's got to go? Like, I think that's where and you have to kind of remove yourself and be like, Mark Miller isn't that kind of guy anymore. Like he actually is writing good stuff. Huck was good, and like Chrononauts and
Empress.
Jupiter's Circle.
Yeah, that
Empress.
was an image, but
But I mean, like he knows how to write these 6-issue minis. He has it down now, and like they are volume 2s, so sometimes it's not us all there is.
I don't think he's given up the violence though, because I just finished the first arc of Hit Girl. Heads be rolling
that's
everywhere.
like a
I'm
remnant
sure
of his
Hit
old
Girl's a
thing.
different time. I mean, it's been established that she's a murderous little
Yeah, that's
demon.
That's like him. Like, oh, you guys like that? I'll keep doing that.
Right.
But like even Starlight, right? Starlight was his book.
Mm-hmm.
Is the one I bought you, right? Like, if you read that, it's like it seems like a different person that wrote that writes Kick-Ass. So
Let's say when I read that, it's not nearly it still has action, but it's about a story and not just about someone kicking some ass.
So that's what, and I think maybe in my head when I saw this issue, I was like, I don't know why, but I was just like, oh, Mark Miller, I don't read his book, and I was really glad I did. It was good. It's like it's a solid mystery and also kind of fun at the same time.
I have to give props to Oliver Coipel for that scene where he's phasing out that magician and like the kind of Rubik's Cube into
yeah.
nothingness.
Yep.
Oh, that was great.
That was
And it's
amazing.
terrifying too because
Right.
he's like,
too late now.
This is a vanishing spell. What was it?
Yeah, it was like a replacing something.
Yeah, and he said we're going to become 2 other people and we won't have any other memory of what's going on. And then they turn into a couple and they're like watching TV.
Oh, I didn't know they got turned into those people. I thought they got
think all the
phased
matter-
into the wall
No, I
and
thought
someone new came into
I
this.
thought all the matter got reshaped, and so like they became.
Oh, I misunderstood. I thought they got like built into the wall. They became the wall, and then these other people just moved into. I mean, not moved in, but he goes, 2 other people will move into this place, and they won't have any memories of how they got there.
I don't think it's anything physical. I think they just got replaced by. That's the magic.
Here's what it said.
could've-
Also, by the way, just slipping through here quick, I do like when they were like, our original purpose on this earth was to fight monsters, and they show that monster.
Oh yeah,
I thought that was so
forgot
cool
about
too.
Yeah.
Like just like a hint of their history.
A nice callback to what they were.
Lucky for Gabriel, they got to be there too.
When the person's like, "Man, the carpet looks different." I remember it being like that. He goes, "Definitely, we had always had blue carpet." He goes, "Then I'm afraid we walked into a changing spell." What? In less than a minute, we won't exist, and someone else will live here, convinced they always have. Sorry, it's too late. There's nothing we can do. The only upside is you won't feel a thing. So I guess
That's
they just
not
like
defined. Yeah.
it just says that other people will live here, but I assumed like everything gets kind of reshaped. It's a
Right.
changing spell. Like it just changes the matter and
Yeah.
be like, oh, these guys were actually here the whole
Like
time.
I said, it doesn't matter. I mean,
They could make like the couch
the answer is
in.
someone else. Those guys died and became this new thing.
Yeah, it'd be like if someone did a change of spell in here, all of a sudden in here there was just one guy and he was eating a chicken on a table. What the heck's that mean? But you know what I mean? Like us three would be like,
Hopefully it's dead.
you would have become the table, he would have become the chicken, I become the dude.
I get eaten.
Well, it doesn't matter because you got to reshape your matter. We're all stardust, baby. That's all that happens.
So he's dead anyway.
Yeah.
We all died,
Yeah, I was going to say, it's not me. I got reshaped into him.
or we all got reshaped into those things.
But I
Anywho,
think
I don't
so
wanna
many
be
great
you.
ideas in this book that, he is a guy, I guess that's what I'm trying to say. He's not a guy that's just all about like mindless violence anymore. He's a guy with the great ideas. So many little things that you're like, that's cool. Like the monster hunting, the families fighting with the magic. There's so many hunting wizards and sorcerers and the family even dynamics about it that I think that if you're looking for a new book or somebody like Mark Miller's miniseries are always great to be like, hey, this, you can read this. And I think this is great for somebody just to read as like your first book. Like if this is Netflix's new thing, if Netflix were like to try to get into the game and like put this on Netflix to read as a digital thing, I guarantee this would be a huge thing.
Well, hey, yeah, if you're a big fan of magic in general, I mean, anywhere from your kind of Harry Potter magic to your Lord of the Rings magic to your stage magician magic, this is for you because there's going to be probably a little bit of everything.
Well, and that's kind of what it felt like. It felt like a Supernatural, the TV show. It felt like Harry Potter because when you die as a wizard, they break your wand and you're buried with your wand. It did just feel like, what was the other magic, or just magicians
I mean,
in general?
just everything.
Yeah.
Wizards, magicians.
So it was a nice
magic
combination.
people.
I like that. This was a solid 9 for me.
This was a 10.
I'm going to stick with 9 because there was enough mystery in there that I don't feel. There's still some questions I have, but I need.
You know what?
more
Actually,
issues.
I'll go 10. Because can't think of anything. When you just said that, I was like, what would I change? Nothing really.
Because there are things
good solid
there were
first
things
issue.
that surprised me. The curse that changed things around. Knowing that we actually got pretty decent history of these, not even necessarily as a whole family, but as these characters, where they came from. The bad guy, scary as hell. This other woman that just kind of shows up when she wants to, and her other henchmen.
But isn't that her? The one that made the person kill?
No.
Why?
We don't know who it is.
The blue assistant was standing right next to that person.
No, we don't know who it is.
Because whoever the first thing looked like, I think
We don't know,
I
but
think
the
person
assistant
at
is
the
the
end-
same guy at the cemetery. The blue guy in the beginning is the same blue guy that changed into the dead husband.
I'd have to look again, but like the bad guy, whoever the thing is at the end of the book, after they do that curse,
Yeah.
the change rooming, I'm assuming is the bad guy.
Yeah.
Who did the murder? Who used the
Or
kid
girl.
or girl?
The Magic Order number 1. Thor number 1. Mr. Miracle number 9. Red Hood and the Outlaws number.
23. Nancy Drew
Nancy
number
Drew.
one.
That's your number 1. And also...
Haven't talked about.
Oh,
it.
yeah, that's it. Right? Oh, yeah, only 5 books.
There's only 5.
Go ahead and pick this up at your local comic shop or online digitally, however you want to consume them. I'm not your keeper. Do whatever you want. I actually am like, there's a part of me that is kind of sad that I was like, I don't need this physical. I bought it digitally already because I actually want to give it to people and be like, this is cool. You should read this. Magic Order. But also, I think I'm going to be like, hey, you should buy this digitally.
Only somebody gave you access to that possibility magically.
I know. They were sold out and I put one back. So somebody will get the magic of picking up an issue that they couldn't have before. Supercon 2018, Return of the Con, September 28th, 29th, and 30th. Tickets on sale at supercon.com. Alex, we're going to be there doing a show, aren't we?
Yeah, we're gonna be there on the 28th, doing a live show for everyone. What's it gonna be called? Wednesday Comics After Dark.
And not only us are going to be there, a lot of people are going to be there. Phil Hester, right, Garrett?
Yes, Phil Hester, the current artist of Batman Beyond. He's done other projects like Shipwreck, He's done some Swamp Thing that you may or may not have seen, and some Holland Files that came out recently.
Not only Phil, Science Steve, Shay Fontana, Tony Fleece, Travis Nye, Midwest All Pro doing a show the 28th. They'll be doing a show that night. That's the main attraction that night. Jill Thompson, Ryan Cody, John Allen, and more. Tom Wynn. Going to be at Supercon.com. Make sure there's a lot going on that weekend. I would say, if I am going to tell you any kind of advice, buy that weekend pass. You won't regret it. You got MAP concert that night also. You got Wednesday Comics After Dark. And then you got a whole weekend of stuff to do, people to see. Supercon.com for more information. We are here to talk about, it's been 7 years. One day, 7 years ago, a young Marvin read.
He was 23 years old.
Had been reading for a year, a series that was 2 volumes long. And one day they said, yeah, we don't know when the rest is going to come out. And I said to myself, I made peace with it. I said, I will go to my grave never knowing what happens with these characters. Jonathan Hickman, I'm on your side now. I'll read anything you do. And that's how I became in love with him. And and then he retired. I would, in a way, I think he, except for Black Monday Murders, has stopped doing comics. I don't know. Right now, he's talking about the World Cup on Twitter instead of writing. He literally said
that tweet probably took 2 weeks.
He literally said today, the World Cup has started. Do not talk to me about comics for the next month. So don't expect Black Monday Murders anytime soon.
Difference between
that actually kind of makes me sad.
Well, it's all about your passions, I suppose.
Anyways, but then randomly, like over the years, we had heard John Hickman said, "Hey, I finished S.H.I.E.L.D. It's all in Dustin Weaver's hands now." And Dustin was like, "I finished the art. It's all in Marvel's hands now." And I believe that was 2 years ago. And Marvel said, was keeping it shut, being like they didn't know when they were going to release the last 2 issues. And we thought maybe it was going to come at the end of Secret Wars. Didn't happen. And then one day, randomly, 3 months ago, I'm going to call it March 15th, the Ides, some previews came out for this month. And they said, hey, no, it would have been February because the last issue came out last month, right? And they said, hey, by the way, we're going to release the last 2 issues. Out of the blue, for no reason, nothing's going on right now. And we're going to release them. And
it's not an event, quotation marks.
And then at Free Comic Book Day, Garrett said, I'm going to pick up those issues. He picked them all up. He read them. Or read the first volume, I believe, right?
First volume and the first... Well, then I bought Rebirth the week before Free Comic Book Day. Because they released issue 1 through 4 in one issue.
The second volume, they released it in one issue. And I said, hey, by the way, just so you guys know, though, like that's not the actual beginning of the story. That's the second part.
Right.
So you went back and tried to find the back issues and you found them on Free Comic Book Day. Alex, you just found them online?
Yep.
And we got them all together. And Garrett read and he said that he enjoyed it, which was a surprise to me.
Up to issue 4. I mean, like, that's before these 2 issues came out, correct?
And then Alex said he read it in the forecast. He said he was liking it.
Surprised you?
Was also surprised to me. So we have S.H.I.E.L.D. by Jonathan Hickman and Dustin Weaver. We're going to talk about it because it is a big part of my life. This is like...
It's a decade in the making.
This is like your father goes out for cigarettes and he finally comes back home.
Isn't this true? Like, this is a 10-year story? Because volume 1...
This is like Alex left and 7 years later he came back and I go, hey, buddy, where are you guys?
I'm back.
What did you say?
Well, I said, hasn't this been a decade-long story, though? Because, like, just because it cliffhanged at 2011 doesn't mean it started. It didn't start in, like, 2009?
10.
It did start 2010?
Like beginning
close
almost, yeah, almost like 8-9 years.
For Marvin, it felt like a decade.
Dude, yesterday felt like a decade to me. So we get this book which has what John Hickman did recently with Manhattan Project. You take characters who actually existed and have some historical fiction with them, but this one also has the benefit of mixing it with Marvel Universe. So we're going to kind of go over an overview, and then we'll talk about the last recently 2 issues, how this thing ended. So the first series, I would say, the first volume, is about a character called Leonid, right? Is that how you say his name?
Leonid?
I was saying Leonid, but...
I think it's...
like Leonardo? Why would you say Leonid?
Because it's Leo, and then N-I-D.
So Leonid. Like Leonard.
Should we ask?
Yeah, ask the pronunciation.
So this character here, which, by the way, let me tell you up front, if you read volume 1 and 2 and the little middle issue that's in between that has like 3 stories in it, before we got to the last 2, even in those first two, there's a lot thrown at you, especially even like those first 2 issues. And I would not think down on anybody if they read those first 2 issues and they were like, yeah, I don't know what's going on. I'm done. Jonathan Hickman is a man that will throw a bunch of things at you and say, hold on, one day you'll figure, like one day in this series, you're going to figure it out. And a lot of things get thrown at you and they don't get paid off to like the second volume. And you'll see things being like, oh, that's what that was. You know, like characters. But I think Jonathan Hickman, I was reading the issues today, the newest ones that came out, 4 and 5. Oh, 5 and 6. And I kept thinking, being like, what is it with Jonathan Hickman? Like anybody else, they throw too much at me and I'm like, whoa, buddy, like, I don't know what's going on. But for him, like, I'm okay with it. You know what it is? And he does this beautifully in this series, is that there's like cliffhangers every 2 or 3 pages for somebody's story when there's so many characters. And you're like, oh, like it's exciting. He'll throw a lot at you and be like, this is what this means. This is all you need to know right now. Let's go on to the next thing. And it's enough to be like, you know what it reminds me of? It's when you have like Hot Wheels, right? And they make those Hot Wheels sets. They have like loops and stuff like that, but they have magnets every once in a while, right? It's not like smooth throughout the whole thing, but there's enough to make you keep going, right? And every once in a while you hit a bunch of them and it goes really fast. And that's Hickman. You have to be patient enough to be like, every once in a while it's going to seem slow, but it does pick up. And when you get to the end, it's all going to go crazy. I think that's all Hickman stories at the end. Is just like, whoa, what's going on? Like, There's so much going on.
I think you definitely, when you're reading Hickman book, any resource he throws at you, appendix, anything like that, even if it's not going to make sense, just look it over, because, you know, as much as you do it, once you see it that first time, you're going to see it multiple times.
Leonid.
So we're both wrong. Leonid. But, yeah, so I mean, like, you know, even Black Monday Murders, you know, you see all these diagrams, they don't really make sense till later on. Especially when you get to these last 2 issues, you can see how those engines are working and things like that for like the human machine and whatnot.
Let me pull up here. I had it up here a second ago, but then I had to pull up the Secret Order to look up that thing for you guys.
By the way, these all of these covers, first volume, second volume, that intermediate issue, they all have some amazing art covers.
Yeah, they're really incredible.
You know what's incredible with this series, because it took 8 years, you can see the evolution of Dustin Weaver from issue 1 to now, and you're like,
issue 1 looks like not Blue's Clues, Clifford characters, and then like now it's like,
it's really great.
Yeah.
So let's see here. I got the plot up here because there's a lot going on in these books, and I want to kind of like lay it out in front of us. We can talk through it as we go. The series details the secret history of an occult organization called the Brotherhood of the S.H.I.E.L.D, with a history extending back to ancient Egypt. So the first issue, we go back and we see Imhotep. How do you say his name?
Imhotep.
Yes. And he's the first member, the first guy to be like, somebody needs to protect this planet from everything.
He uses the shield and the spear to fight the Brood.
Yes. The main story of the first issue is set in 1953, shortly after the death of Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin. During the height of the Cold War, S.H.I.E.L.D. agents Nathaniel Richards and Howard Stark, which, by the way, for you guys, right, Howard Stark has become a character recently because of the movies, right, or a guy that people know. And Nathaniel Richards really is kind of a guy, like, you would have to read Hickman stuff. He's a really big character in there.
I was going to say, I had no clue he even existed before the series.
What do you guys think about those two characters overall?
I think they're fun. I think they're like the buddy cop of the story. Like, they're throughout, like, they make me laugh a lot. Like, they just have this like witty banter amongst them. That
for a majority of the story, they're really the only connections to Marvel.
I said that's for me that they are the Marvel part of this book, because everything else is either historical related or some extract historical fiction.
They enlist a young man named Leonid. Is that what it said?
Leonid.
With an unspecified superpower into the organization, taking him to the S.H.I.E.L.D's High Council in the immortal city under Rome. So Rome, they've known, I mean, it's a real thing. Rome is built on top of the ancient Rome, but they find out that there's a immortal city underneath that actually is still functioning. And he takes them down there. The High Council reveals that they know the final fate of man, and their mission is to ensure nothing threatens the world before this occurs. They have chosen Leonid because he has a destiny, and flashbacks reveal that S.H.I.E.L.D. was founded by, like we said before, Imhotep, following a battle. And in that battle, by the way, I don't know if you guys noticed, because this series, it does have Marvel tie-ins, but it's not constrained to being like, we have to tell you in this kind of way. And it actually, a majority of the series is just like doing its own thing, which is kind of refreshing. But there's still stuff. So in that fight, there is Apocalypse and the original Moon Knight fighting with them. I don't know if you guys saw them.
Yeah, I studied that 2-page spread for like 10 minutes.
So that's the way there, and they're fighting against the Brood and the previous agents, Zhang Hing, who tricked the Celestial into giving the sun, or using the sun to give birth to a child instead of destroying their Earth or Moon. So they said, they explained the Celestial. She was like, usually we go into planets, and that's how we're born. We blow the planet. We use its energy, but I'm pregnant. Like, this is the first time this has ever happened. Like, the Celestial's like, I'm pregnant, so what do I do? Like, I need to destroy this Earth. That's what's going to happen. He goes, well, I get a better idea. And basically puts the baby in the sun. Later on in the series, we see Michelangelo, the Forever Man, go to the sun and get the sun baby out of there. And he'll show up later. But he is a character in the background, what I would call, for a while, just because you've seen what the Celestials have done throughout the series of this book, they've always been like the bad guy. And just the way he looks, you kind of know that maybe one day it's not going to be okay with him. And you see him at the beginning, he's going, when he first comes out of the sun, he goes, 1 + 2 = 3. And he goes, that's right. Michelangelo goes, that's right, son. Or it's not. Did he call him son? I don't think he calls him son. That's right. And then throughout the whole series, you see him learn more and more mathematics. Like, he goes, 2 × 2 = 4. And then one day he's just like,
bajillion,
basically
bajillion.
Like, infinity
it's 5.
Infinity. All right.
That was cool. And when he started figuring out that infinity equals infinity, that was cool. That kind of gave me chills. Like, holy shit, this guy's smarter than all of us. Or this machine.
Galileo and Leonardo da Vinci. Galileo, they show him fighting Galactus at one point, which is cool. And Leonardo da Vinci, you see him fly off in his little, what's it called? Ornithopter?
Whatever.
Little helicopter thing.
His flying stuff.
And then it cuts to 3 years later, right? Leonid's been with the S.H.I.E.L.D. for 3 years. And he is visited by his father, a superhuman named the Night Machine, who we see in flashbacks later on that he was encountered by S.H.I.E.L.D. before and they try to kill him. And so he's there to give him a key to the headquarters and say that his destiny cannot be dictated by others. And he goes up there and he sees Da Vinci. And Da Vinci's like, what I have here in my hand is the, what's the machine called?
Human machine.
Human machine. And he says, and then Newton comes up there and he sees him and he's like, there's no way you're Leonardo. He's dead. Like, he disappeared one day and we never saw him. And they talk in holographics. What does it call it? No. What do you call it on the Egyptian? Hieroglyphics. So they talk,
Hieroglyphics?
Hieroglyphics.
Yes.
So they talk and
He's saying things wrong, so I was just listening to his wrong words.
I've never.
Hieroglyphics.
What evidence throughout the show have I ever said anything right? And so
Can't even get my name right.
Write that down. Write that down.
And he goes, "You really are Leonardo." And this starts a schism between these two on how to run S.H.I.E.L.D. because Leonardo used to be the head of S.H.I.E.L.D. Then he disappeared, and that's when Isaac Newton, which we see later on throughout the series, has killed his way to the top. And now he's the leader. And so Leonardo says, I'm going to basically go over here. If people want to follow me, they want to follow me. But we're going to lead this team. We're going to lead by inspiration. And people are going to come to me because they want to be led by me. And Newton says, no, like, we lead this S.H.I.E.L.D. now by power and by rule. Like, he's really hard about being a hard leader. And throughout the series, slowly you see everybody's going to Leonardo's side and like really believe in him. And it starts a war between the two. We'll get to that in a second. Then cut to Michelangelo, we see again show up, the Forever Man. And you see Nostradamus is tied up in the basement being fed the infinity formula, which is a Marvel thing also. He's being fed this to stay alive so he can tell Newton how the future is going. He goes down there every once in a while and goes, what's going to happen next? What's going to happen next? And so he's like telling him for centuries. And that's how Newton stays in powers, because he's always one step ahead because Nostradamus is telling him. And then Night Machine, we find out is Tesla.
Hell
Tesla, baby.
yeah. Nikola
And Michelangelo, like when he almost died because of the shield, Michelangelo found him and recovered him and said, "Hey, I'm going to make you into a cybernetic machine,
A cyborg."
And
Shut your mouth.
and then he's the one who brought him. So then cut to it. So that's kind of like the first volume. It's really kind of more straightforward by the time you get to the end. And then volume 2, we kind of go back. It reminds me of that end scene, spoilers, for Usual Suspects, when you finally see how everything fits. Like you're saying about Nancy Drew, right? We see that Michelangelo took a baby from Newton, or Newton had relations with this creature, and then he took the baby, and she says, "I want you to promise me that this baby will never be in Newton's hands." He goes, "I can't promise you that. I'll promise you one thing, though. He'll live." And she goes, "Fine." She gives him the baby. He disappears, and Leonid's mother that we see later on, the bird, he gives her the baby. And she has a relationship with Tesla, so that's why he thinks that Tesla's his dad. And later on, he finds out that no, Newton's my dad. What was I going to say about that part? Oh, but then they give him a key. He says, "One day you give him this key." And so the whole thing Michelangelo set up from the beginning, this Forever Man. And it's all to save the end of the world, which are going to be these last 2 issues that come out. So we have a lot of setup. I feel like the first 2 volumes up to 4. Is it 4? We're just the issue that's all silent. Is issue 4?
3.
3. So basically 8 issues plus that one tie-in, or that one middle one, are all really kind of set up to make you understand where we're at and stuff like that. Now, for you guys really coming into this, Alex read it you both read it brand new. What am I thinking of? Was it throughout those 8 issues? Is it a lot to take in about what's going on with this?
No, I don't. I think it's subtle enough that you're not getting force fed too much. I think, yes, there is a lot of information, but I think there's 2 storylines going on. There's the A storyline that's taking place over this entire series, but the B storyline would be like each issue there's its own story. So I think if you're following that, but you're also being aware that they're trying to tell that Hickman and Weaver are trying to tell a bigger narrative. You just got to kind of keep that. You can't take everything at face value. You got to look a little deeper. Like I said, like when you see that 2-page spread of Emotep, you see like Moon Knight and stuff like that. That's really, really deep in there, and you can't just gloss over. Just because there's a lot of art on a panel, you can't just gloss over things. Just because there's a lot of text in a panel, you can't just gloss over it. You need to actually read it, and before you move on, make sure you know what they're saying before you keep going. And if you don't understand it, still in the context of that one panel, read it, understand it, move on. And if you don't get it, just keep going. And you have to. That's all you can do.
This is the book that there never seemed to be too much text. And I think something that Jonathan Hickman does really well is he knows when he knows when to let the art do the job. But he also knows when I need to tell you stuff, when you need to know these things. And a part of that, this book wasn't hard to read. And a lot of it was that a good chunk of these characters were real men. So it's not like, oh, who's Isaac Newton? Well, I know who Isaac Newton is. Or who is Nikola Tesla? I know who that is. That I already had these character bases. Now I just have a face to go with the name. Oh, okay, I know he made a lot of inventions. Oh, holy shit, he's got a whole lot of inventions here. It made this book interesting. It branched it out. I didn't think it was hard to read. Now, to be fair, you're talking about a lot of stuff I read these 2 weeks ago. Can't remember what they were now, but...
That's what I was going to say. When I was reading that narration, it probably sounds a little boring, just reading it like that, because when you read it straightforward, like it really is like, oh, then this. But when you read it in the way Hickman tells that story, when you read it, when you don't find out that Newton is his dad until that middle issue, and you see the way he's killed everybody, and like he went to that civilization and wanted some information from them, so he had sex with that creature to make a baby to be like, oh, he is friendly, and then he stole the information and burned the city down to be like, this guy is ruthless, he doesn't care about anything. But to see, and then you see that like it's not his, the kid is Leonid. Like all that, like the way it's told and the way he drops little hints throughout the way, and then like that's what makes it exciting. Right. That's what makes it interesting. What Alex said is very valid. Like it's never like here's everything at once, a lot of exposition, but it doesn't also hold your hand. It doesn't also be like, hey, this is what I'm talking about. Like Garrett was saying, that two-perch bed, if you don't notice Moon Knight, you don't notice Moon Knight. If you just
But
move
it's
up,
cool if you do notice Moon
that's
Knight.
what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
If you don't notice like special things, or if you do like, and it has the benefit of having these people like Nikola Tesla, who's a real person. Obviously, he's not the Night Machine and doing all this weird shit, but like, or Da Vinci or Michelangelo.
Leonardo da Vinci's right behind you, Arnold. You had to look, make sure.
But
Machine.
what was I saying? Oh, but like you have the benefit of having these characters, so you don't really have to flesh them out, but you kind of do a little bit because they're not those people. But it's enough for like what Alex was saying. You'd be like, oh, Da Vinci.
Yep.
Yeah, I know who Da Vinci is. I know he's an inventor. Like he is still in this book. He's a smart man. These are all smart people in this book, and like they're all having a war to basically make Newton's trying to make sure the world is safe so it can end one day the way it's supposed to end. And I don't know, there's something about the way he writes, and it's you see it later on, and I was saying before the show that Hickman is in a unique situation where the last two issues didn't come out until years later. So he had his Fantastic Four run, he did Secret Warriors. Secret Warriors was kind of before this, and then kind of was a little bit afterwards. Fantastic Four, he did his Avengers, huge run, and then led to Secret Wars. And so he got to put a stamp on Marvel, and then 2 more issues come back to be like, and there's a lot of tie-ins with all this stuff. And I don't know whether or not this is intentional from the beginning, if it originally was his idea, or now that he's had the benefit of doing this stuff, that he put it in. I was telling the guys for the show, Nathaniel Richards, that's throughout Fantastic Four. He's a character in there, so if you want to know more about him, you can read that.
Who is Nathaniel Richards? Is he
Reed's dad.
Reed's dad?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's like Howard's, Tony's dad.
Yep,
Wow.
I knew who Howard was.
What do you
but-
guys think also about those characters? You see Nathaniel was like, I'll be back for my family one day. I don't care what they said. I'm not leaving forever. And you see Howard say, I'm never going back. The family just holds you back. I need to be able to push myself as far as I can go.
I mean, I can kind of go to show you how different, like if you think about them as in like Tony Stark and Reed Richards all about family and like working together to get things done. He maybe gets a little obsessive like any inventor or like person, but still he's got the best intentions at heart. Tony's a selfish bastard. He's going to do whatever he can to get the furthest advancement, and he's not trying to be selfish, but he just can't help himself.
But then I think it's also that Tony doesn't want to be what Howard was, so he actually is more of a team player, unlike his dad, who really was
Yeah.
kind of like, I'm doing this
That's
to
where
make...
he gets his smugness.
Yeah. I mean, I'll admit, Tony Stark is a dickweed, but he doesn't want to be what Howard was.
And then I believe it's Avengers, or maybe New Avengers. They both start this issue 6, which now we'll get into these new issues here. Issue 6, 3rd page in, it starts exactly like how that book starts. It's just a black panel. It says, there was nothing, followed by everything, swirling, burning specks of creation that circled life-giving suns and was born into light. And so you have Hickman like referencing his own work at this point. Well, like I said, I don't know. Maybe that would have been it the first time, and then he got the idea for Avengers, and then he put it in there instead.
Yeah, but he tweets, I had that plan the whole time. I'm that amazing.
So, what do you guys think? For me, obviously, it was 7 to 8 years of hype.
Did you read it all up to this
Yeah, I
point?
did.
Okay.
I reread it this week because there's no way I would remember any of that. What do you think? I mean, 2 issues that have been like 2 issues that we've been first we were like never going to get them again. We're never going to read it. And then they finally say, oh, we're going to put them out. But you guys had the unique perspective of being like, I've never read any of it. Let me just read it all together.
See, that's my thing, is that he and I are at a disadvantage. We don't have your build-up of 7 years going, is this book ever actually going to end?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Like,
And then to find out...
how was it reading it all together?
So I already kind of mentioned this to the guys. I really enjoyed it, and I feel bad for people that read issue 5 right off after not reading the first stuff without rereading it. Because I read the first 8 issues or whatever about a month ago. I caught all the way up.
Yeah.
And then I read issue 5, and I get what they're trying to sell. And I just don't like the context. Me personally, it wasn't for me. It really pulled me out of the story. Because like if you read all the books, yes, there's some like trippy stuff in the way that Hickman and Weaver are telling their story, but it never changed the entire way you tell the story. Like Not
it was still fluid.
Maybe I can't think if it's like maybe the narrative or like the style. It really pulled me out. So I didn't enjoy issue 5. I was like scratching my head trying to keep all the timelines together. And then by the time I got to issue 6, I really loved, but I don't think by the end I was kind of worn out. I was just like, I think I would have liked this more if there wasn't that really confusing issue right before.
See, and that's I
had to go back in when I was reading issue 6 and like look for characters to make sure either they were alive or dead, or like read that again. Like, I don't know. I felt like that would suck if it's been 7 years since the story and then you get this and it's like, whoa, buddy.
Well, so when the last issue 4 that came out for volume 2 was in 2011, when were these issues supposedly finished 2 years later?
No, I would have to look it up, but it's been within the last few years.
Okay. So I'm going to say at least it was 5 years since they had been finished.
They've been finished for the last 2 years, I think.
Okay. So within that, 5 years from the end of issue 4 to finishing issue 5, you can tell that it didn't read the same. And that's maybe my thing, is that whatever break Jonathan Hickman had taken and then decided to change the way to tell the story, I agree with Garrett. It really did kind of take me out of it because it didn't read that same way that I had already read 8 issues prior, going, wow, this book is spectacular. Got to issue 5, I'm like, okay, it's good. It still looks nice, but it's not the S.H.I.E.L.D. that I've read in the last week and a half.
Yeah, I don't think it could ever hold up to what came before. And then when I got to issue 6, it was like, okay, we're back to the way I'm liking this story.
It makes me curious to know what would this book have been like? What would have it looked like, or how would it had read if it had came out and finished in 2011?
Can I say, so the Hickman you're talking about in the storytelling style, Secret Warriors is very much like that early S.H.I.E.L.D. It is very kind of straightforward, adventure-ish. There is great ideas in it, but it's not told like in a way this last 2 issue is. And then you have Hickman, who went on to do those Fantastic Four, which also is not really that crazy, but it's still like trying some new things. And then Avengers, he slowly was like, no, I'm going to make this really out there. And at some points too, I think I borrowed it recently to the Avengers run to somebody, and they gave it back to me around issue 2030 and was like, this is way too confusing. I don't know what's going on. And I was like, but that's the Hickman of today, is when he gets really into something, it is go into this house of mirrors. You're not going to know which way is which, but when you figure it out and you know how to get out of that maze, then you're like, oh, okay. And it's cool at that point. And so I think, for me, as somebody who waited all this time, but I also have somebody who's been reading Hickman throughout all these years, that's Secret Warriors, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and so I kind of grown with him. And maybe that's why I was like, I actually really did enjoy these last 2 issues, because I've seen his evolution. Whereas, you read Avengers, did you?
Yeah, I read Avengers and New Avengers. And whoever read it, I mean, you got to read everything else. I don't think you're going to get that payoff.
I think that's what it is. And like in this here, that's what I'm trying to say. This S.H.I.E.L.D. 4 and 5, I don't know, but I'm going to say
5 and 6.
5 and 6, sorry. 5 and 6, even though he claims like this was an idea way back in the day and it just as it came out to now, this references so much of his work in between that I think that once you read it all, then you're like, oh, that's this thing, and that's when it falls into place. I think you really have to go back and like, for instance, like I just said, right here, there was nothing. This is from S.H.I.E.L.D. number 6. There was nothing, followed by everything, swirling burning specks of creation that circled life-giving suns. I was born into the light. Here's Avengers number 1. And it says previously Avengers. And I remember when this came out, people were like, what do you mean previously in Avengers? It was never previously in Avengers. It just was a page that said previously in Avengers, and it's referencing this page that wasn't out yet. There was nothing, followed by everything, swirling, burling specks of creation that circled light-giving suns, and then we raced towards the light. So in this,
I do remember that.
Leonid says, and it's the art's the same.
Yeah.
The art's literally the same. It's the same thing. And so like in this thing, Leonid's saying, I am the light. And in this one, the Avengers race towards the light. And there's a lot of like in-between things. And I think, and I say this in a way knowing that it's just me. It's my preference, right? That What are you doing?
Oh, your book was bending and it bugged me. Sorry.
I thought you were trying to pick it up. Like I heard what you guys said, and I'm not disagreeing with you. It is pretty crazy. I'm not saying I even understood these last two issues.
I don't have
the same. The only gripe I have is with issue 5. Issue 6 I thought was great and incredible and continued but I feel like I would have liked it more had issue 5 not been told the way it was.
Yeah, there was a weird taste in my mouth after I read 5. But even when I finished up 6, I'm still like, what the hell did I just read? Like, it was good, but what did I read?
I think it kind of goes back to what Da Vinci was trying to say. It's like, hey, this should all be about, we're trying to inspire, we're trying to give people something to look up to like be the best that they could be, kind of like S.H.I.E.L.D. It's like a symbol based off the shield and the spear. Whereas, Newton, he was so scientifical in his mind. He's like, no, there has to be exacts, there has to be edges, there has to be corners.
That's why at the
squares.
end, this is what I believe. So there's 3 possible timelines at the end, and they show up in each one of them, and they try to save the end of the world. Different things happen in different ones, like you were saying. Certain people die, some people don't die yet. But in every single storyline at the end, Leonid and Michelangelo were the only 2 alive, the Forever Man, and Newton. And then he converged them all into one storyline, and Newton could not wrap his mind around that he didn't know what else, like he couldn't see the future anymore. I think Nostradamus, right? No, Michelangelo says, I'm blind. I can't see the future anymore. Like, we're at a point now where the time, because time has always been a constant, like you can jump around, like it doesn't matter. Time is not the past, present, and future. It's always just been. And now they get to a point where Michelangelo's like, we are at a point now where time is being written as we're in it. And that Newton could not wrap his mind around it, that there was no rules here anymore. And so when they finally destroy him, or like they send him to a planet to be like, no, he needs to be somewhere where he knows like what's going on. He wants this place where there's nothing and it can be simple and he can figure it out. And they kind of save the world in that way by making it so that Newton like is satisfied with not with the Earth anymore, because he doesn't understand it anymore. And they go back, and so they go back to the past, and that's when they create S.H.I.E.L.D., the S.H.I.E.L.D. that we know in Marvel Universe, to be this team that saves the universe forever. Because, and that's the thing too. Like, I'm saying all this too, and it could be literally nothing what it's about, but that's what I got out of it. But it's like, I think Hickman's writing, and like Avengers, I've read a couple times, like not the whole thing, but like the certain issues, and Secret Wars, obviously, like it's more straightforward. But this S.H.I.E.L.D., like I read this 7 years ago, and I reread it now. Maybe that's why like I can see certain things, and it's not something that you read once, and it's not something that you read once and go, I understand that. It's like something you read and you're like, oh, that's what that means. Or something where you read Avengers, like I said, and you go, oh, like when I read that and I saw that part, right away I was like, oh, that's what that previous Avengers was. I've never, like, when I read Avengers number 1, 2, I was like, what is this? What
you scratched your head, like, what the fuck?
But now, like, this makes sense because of this. Avengers number 1 makes sense because of S.H.I.E.L.D. 6 that came out, like, this was like 2014, I think.
Yeah,
so
2013.
4 years later, now that previously in Avengers makes sense. And I guarantee you, that, he had it all planned out, and like, or if he didn't, he was like, oh, I'm going to put that in so people finally understand what that is. But that's the way the guy, if you follow him on Twitter, that's the way he is. So if you're going to read his stuff, and like, again, understand your gripes, and I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not even saying I'm right. I'm probably saying I'm less right than you guys are. I just like, it's not storytelling that's for everybody. And I know that because I tried to give it to somebody, and they were like, I don't really get it. And I was like, you know what? You're right. It's not your fault. Like, the guy doesn't write a story.
He writes that way on purpose.
Yeah, that's the way he wants to write. And when he wants to write straightforward, like a Black Monday Murders, but he adds like history and backstory, but that's more straightforward. He can write that way if he wants to.
But even in that, there's still so much obscurity.
That's what I mean. Like, that one's kind of straightforward, but he like dips his toes into like, oh, let's make history for all this. Let's make all these documents and try to build this world. Where sometimes, and I feel like with S.H.I.E.L.D. and with all his Marvel stuff, if he was going to dip his toes into the Marvel universe, he's going to make sure that he's going to be like, you can do anything you want in this universe, so let's just do it.
Yep.
So you know what? Worth it for me. And once again, it might be.
I definitely want to reread it. now that I have
would.
everything.
You know what I would do, and it's a long commitment, but I would read Secret Warriors, Fantastic Four, Avengers,
Again.
and go back and then read S.H.I.E.L.D.
How many years it took me to read through Avengers and New Avengers? Holy shit.
But now it's all back together. So
That's true.
But if you maybe Avengers, not Avengers, if you can remember enough of that.
Yeah.
But Secret Wars actually is pretty fun. It's straightforward. But Fantastic Four, I would go back and read because there's even things in here to like reference.
Maybe
this.
when I have to read Dan Slott's Fantastic Four, I'll be like, I need some real Fantastic Four, so I'll go read that.
I don't know. I like comics that are like the Tom King's Michael, Mr. Miracle, right? I like the Nancy Drew. But the fact I know, and I think I've said it before on the show, right? When you read something, you're like, this is kind of my thing. There's no way anybody's ever going to like, this is not really a popular thing to like. And that's this. And I say that, and I know it sounds pretentious, but I don't mean it that way.
To be fair, it does come off like I'm better than you guys.
I told you. You guys are probably right. It probably is not good.
I think I did. I mean, all the backstory and the information that he just loads into this, I think I really enjoyed all the setup. I think when it just came to the execution, that's where I probably need to do some like rereading and like make sure I understand the linear.
But also, like I said, if it's weird. Like if a series that was supposed to happen 7 years ago is referencing a book that came out 4 years ago, but that doesn't make sense because that never came out. But now it makes sense.
Michelangelo's real.
Yeah, it's messing with fucking time in real life.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, that's kind of crazy that over 8-9 years you can remember certain moments from all these series that you've read. That's nuts.
And see, that's my disadvantage is that I do own New Avengers, I do own Avengers, I do own Secret Warriors, but I haven't read all of them. So that some of these things that you're noticing, I haven't noticed because I haven't read them.
Or read all those and then reread this.
Like, holy shit. Mine just blows up.
Maybe that spear is like the Holy Grail, and this whole time we haven't even noticed.
So I would say overall. So what did you give the last 2 issues? No, actually, you know what? What do you give the whole series?
The whole series, I'd give an 8.
Agreed. An 8.
It had potential to be better. Like before reading 5 and 6, 10, 100%.
I would give it a 9. It's not my favorite thing by him, but I think actually, for me to after 7 years be like, you know what? I'm okay with how this ended. Is probably the greatest thing I could say about this book for at least somebody who's been reading this for a while. But it's not my favorite thing by him. That Fantastic Four is great. Yeah. I would think that's my favorite thing by him. But yes, but what's like I said, like the main character here, Leonid, is like there's a character like that in Avengers, and like that story continues there kind of, and he kind of references like this kind of old S.H.I.E.L.D. thing in that storyline. Fantastic Four has Nathaniel Richards, like. The whole thing ties in. So enough for me to be, and it might be like Garrett says every once in a while, like those Easter eggs where you're like, oh, that's cool. But also for me, also the way that it's like intertwined is also good storytelling for me, at least. That it's not just Easter eggs being like, hey, remember this? It's like, no, this is what this means 4 years later. Like, are you still with me with this?
Yeah. Right.
Like, you're not reading Avengers and like, you'll understand all of Avengers by just reading Avengers. He's like, oh, no, you got to read my S.H.I.E.L.D. run too. It's commitment, but if you do it, I think it's worth it.
I think he's one of those writers, though, that it's an investment. It's not just even the first arc will anything that you've just read.
Believe me, I do think he feels, if you follow him on Twitter, I do actually think that he's a very humble guy, but also I do think that he's like, well, if I'm going to write something and they're giving me the Range City series, they're all going to be connected and I'm going to make you read all of them. Like, it's also pretentious in that way, but I think that it's just
That's kind of fun for fans too. Though.
But I think it's fun for him. I think he really gets into being like, you know what? Nathaniel Richards, he's going to be in Fantastic Four. We're going to reference some of this. You know what? And he goes, let's reference Avengers #1. You remember I said previously? It would have been previously that issue actually came out, but since it didn't, now it's going to be 4 years later, and like you're going to be like, oh, that's what that thing was.
Yep. I think that's maybe the big thing for him is that you're right. If anyone's going to give you the contract to be on a Marvel book or a DC book, or even when he does his own stuff, if you're going to take the time, because I mean, it's not just work for us to read the book; it's work for him to make the book and to get the right artist and to put the right words that he wants. You might as well have everything come together.
Yeah.
So it's one nice, tight, big bundle.
I
picture him having like a penthouse basically with like 20 different rooms, and each room's devoted to a different comic
You know what's
series.
funny? Two things here. I know he knows that it's not for everybody because he wrote on Twitter, like when the last issue came out, he goes, I just make Marvel mad at making books that Marvel will never be able to sell. It's when issue 5 came out. And then also, I know that Marvel is like, oh, buddy, like, what do we do here? This is way like too out there, because Marvel Unlimited is a place besides his last 2 issues of S.H.I.E.L.D. You can read his whole thing: Secret Warriors, Fantastic Four, Avengers, and they have a section where they have like collections. And there's not a Jonathan Hickman collection. There should be, to be like, hey, you want to read this whole story? Like, here it is. Read Secret Warriors, read Fantastic Four, and there's not a thing for it. So I know they're not like, hey, you guys want to read this Jonathan Hickman, basically like almost 1,000-issue story that intertwines? Like, some of it connects, something really doesn't connect. It's not 1,000 issues, but it's.
I was like, is it really 1,000? No
well,
way.
43, 33.
I'll just go wiki.
28.
The Avengers thing itself is like 100 issues.
Yeah.
That's what the 43 and 33 were.
I can look it up after this is done, but you know, like, it's really a time commitment. I know that if you have Marvel Unlimited, that's my recommendation. Go back and read that whole thing, and it take a while, but I think it's worth it. WednesdayComics605 at gmail.com. Email in and let me know how pretentious I sounded this episode, because I did. Twitter, that's at Alex Mistrell. Let him know what you think of the Red Hood. Wait, no, you liked it. Accurate2188. Garrett said it was 10 out of 10. Let him know what you thought about the Red Hood. Alex, let him know about Magic Order. That was his favorite book of the week. Let him know also how you enjoyed it. At Marvin_Seguero. Send me your tweets about how
pretentious you are.
I sound like a jackass. YouTube.com. Find us on there. You can see the gauntlet with Garrett this week by himself in his house. I have it here. I can upload. I have it uploaded. I just got to push
Gauntlet.
submit.
Home edition.
Maybe one day we'll get a catching up with Garrett again. You catching up, buddy?
You know what I should do? I should do a catching up with Alex. I've got 100 books to talk about.
You know what? Something actually.
It's just you staring.
You guys should let us know, because early on in the Wednesday Comics timeline, I'll say, just like Jonathan Hickman's timeline, it's all over the place. We did a couple of videos that weren't on. We didn't have a YouTube page at the time, so we just did them on Twitter, like live, and Facebook Live. And I don't know if they're housed anywhere or you can actually view them still. But we went over our collection, showed you our collections. If you want us to do that again, let us know. And we'll do some new ones that actually with some production value. I'll like edit it together. That way it actually looks like we could do like a Crip.
We gotta wait till the fall though, till Garrett gets his new man cave. So.
MTV Crip style. Is that too old for you?
I don't know. I was like 7. You guys were like 30. I mean,
so make sure to subscribe to the show on Google. Oh, by the way, they changed 2 names of things, so I got to make sure. Apple Podcasts it's called now, not iTunes. Google Podcasts, no more just Google Play. Stitcher Radio and Spotify. Those are the main ones, but you know what? I've seen us in other things, so make sure you subscribe, let your friends know, and voicemail is 605-215-1849. It's crossed off now for some reason. 605-215-1849. Make sure you leave us voicemails because we're having a book club coming up right here.
Wednesday Comics League of Extraordinary Gentle People proudly presents
Saga of the Swamp Thing, Volume 1, Book 1 it's called, and it's by Alan Moore. We'll have John Boylan here, and he will give his expert opinions on the Avatar of the Green. Meanwhile, the 3 of us will be kind of just like how you guys probably were when I was explaining that S.H.I.E.L.D. story, looking onto the distance, being like, oh, that's what that was about.
I will be honest, I did kind of daze off.
I was like,
I know, that's why.
I'll wait until he gets
does
through.
the paragraph end?
That's why I put it down. I was like, oh, let's just talk.
What if there's bullet points?
Supercon 2018.
Hey, at least you break it up.
Supercon 2018, Return of the Con, September 28th, 29th, and 30th. We'll be there the 28th. Please show up and buy your ticket for the whole weekend pass. We're going to play some games. It's going to really be, you can bring anybody to it. It's not really going to be purely about comics. It'll be about the joy and love behind comics, but we're going to have some guests on that show. We're going to play it up. And I do know there's a bar there, so you will see Drunk Marvin. He will show up. Will we see Drunk Garrett? Who knows?
I don't know if you guys could handle Drunk Marvin. He doesn't. He's like the Phoenix.
We can't handle Drunk
He's
Marvin.
like Jean Grey. He's like burning in your eyes.
You better believe it's never been on this show, but if you ever heard any of the pre-show, and maybe one day I'll put it in the show. Who knows? There's a way I get hyped up for the show. We will get hyped up in that room. I'll tell you that much.
God damn it.
RootsOfTheSwampThing.com, your definitive online source for all things Swamp Thing. You follow him on Twitter at DCWorldSwampy. and on Facebook at facebook.com/Roots of the Swamp Thing. By the way, if you are local and you have a Rainbow Comics, I'm not sure if it's in the Lincoln location, but in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, Volume 1 and 2 of Holland Files is back in print. You can buy it there, $12.99, correct?
Correct.
And get your copy. They were a limited run, and somehow they pop back up here.
They are amazing, and if you have an opportunity to pick them up, you really should.
He's getting together the crew for number 3, so make sure to pick up those 2 issues to get them. They are a collector's item. There's very limited run, and they are, like Garrett said, they are worth the price of admission. And then after you read it, rootsofswampthing.com, learn some more about the Avatar of the Green. Like Alex was saying earlier, Justice League Dark, he will be in that. You got to know who he is. They're making a TV show. This guy is ramping up. You know what? Every once in a while, there's a spectator market when a new TV show comes out and people go and buy the issue, and they want to know all about it. I'm telling you right now, this Swamp Thing in the next year and 2 years is going to be hot. Get in now. That way, when your friends go, "Hey, who's this Swamp Thing?" You'd be like, "Let me tell you about this guy." Well, that's it, boys. Look at that. Get all done with that list. We talked about S.H.I.E.L.D. for way too long. And because I got, 7 years, you got to talk about it for 2 seconds.
Well, I understand that.
You got to give it a fair shake.
Some good comics this week. Some ones that I wish were better. Some ones that actually pretty good stack. You guys like Red Hood, right? It was decent.
Yeah, Red Hood was good.
Miracle was great. Magic Order.
I think the only one that I wish would have been better would have been Thor, and that's because we were comparing it to Immortal Hulk from last week, which was immaculate.
Was that it? What else did we had? One more, right?
Order S.H.I.E.L.D. was 6.
Nope, that was it. And I like the S.H.I.E.L.D. You guys thought it was okay, but you know what?
I lean towards great, but there's just some hindrances.
You know what? That's the joy of comics, though, right? Sometimes you can get a Nancy Drew and read about a goat who chews through a rope. Sometimes you can get a Mr. America and it'll teach you a little bit about life. Sometimes you'll get Red Hood and the Outlaws, and it'll be a good character study, as Garrett said earlier. I was listening. Don't act like I wasn't.
Yeah, you just picked up on good key verbs. For like, oh, yeah, that character study was really good.
And sometimes you'll read S.H.I.E.L.D. after 7 years and think to yourself, I don't know what's going on, but man, I think this is good. The man who never knows what's going on. My name is Marvin.
I'm Alex.
Thank God I'm Garrett.
Hey, everyone. Keep turning those pages.